Chapter 1442. The appearance of the three heaven-opening swords caused a stir in the battle arena. Originally, Xiao Baiyu could still rely on his familiarity with the heaven-opening sword formation to deal with the 6 people, but after the appearance of the 3 pure yang swords, the situation suddenly changed. Although the appearance of the pure yang spiritual treasures caused the gap between the 6 people to widen, this widening gap was completely covered up by the sudden increase in strength of Xie Tianyang, Su Jin, and Fan Mingjie. Xiao Baiyu was trapped in the sword formation and surrounded by the 6 people, completely at a disadvantage. In the cultivation world, one might not even see a pure yang spiritual treasure in 1,000 years. However, the 3 pure yang swords on the field were not to be underestimated. They were inherited from heaven opening and were nurtured by Jiao Daoren. They were imbued with Jiao Doran's aura. Although they could not be compared to heaven-opening divine weapons, they were not ordinary pure yang spiritual treasures. Lu Ping saw that the sword chi on the field was crisscrossing. The heaven-opening sword formation was fully unleashed. Although it seemed to have more flaws, in fact, its power was stronger. Even someone as strong as Xiao Baiyu could not do anything against the fleeting flaws of the sword formation. Seeing this, Lu Ping sank his mind into the core space. He saw the sword of true spirit trembling due to the attraction of the heaven-opening sword formation. At the same time, there was also the motionless praying mantis in 2. Lu Ping comforted his natal sword and asked the pure yang spiritual treasure with a smile. "Can the heaven-opening sword formation on the field be cut?" The praying mantis said with a rare solemn expression. "No!" Lu Ping was surprised. "It's rare. Lord Having actually has a time when he is ashamed of his inferiority." The praying mantis snorted and said, "I was personally taught by Taoist Chan. The water-dissolving talisman is not weaker than the heaven-opening sword formation. The only difference is that it has not been nurtured for long enough, and its foundation is not strong enough. If you advance to pure yang and nurture your body for 500 years with pure yang vital energy, you will definitely be on par with it." Lu Ping nodded. Based on the quality of the pure yang scissors, the mantis was right. Turning back to look at the battlefield, Xiao Baiyu was still in a disadvantageous position, but he was still relying on the absolute power of the heaven-opening sword technique to barely maintain the situation. Although he was still at a disadvantage, it was much better than when he was besieged by the 6 people. When had the sky-splitting sword saint, the number 1 cultivator of pure yang, ever fallen to such a state? Lao Tzu, who was watching the battle from the various sects, sighed. At the same time, he was secretly amazed at the depth of Purple Sun Palace's foundation, boldness, and farsightedness. As the sect's guardian treasures, the 3 heaven-opening swords had actually been given to the younger generation for many years. They had been nurtured by the younger generation for many years, and their minds were connected to each other. In a battle of magical powers, they could display an additional 20% of their power for no reason. The 3 heaven-opening sword techniques linked together to form a heaven-opening sword array. With the 3 heaven-opening swords as the lead, they formed a huge sword net. Even someone like Xiao Baiyu could only be a trapped beast. Once the time was up, the sword array would operate to the extreme, and the outcome would be decided. However, Lu Ping knew that Xiao Baiyu's means were naturally not limited to this. Although he had already used the heaven-opening sword technique, the spiritual treasure sky-splitting sword in his hand still did not reveal the quality of its pure yang spiritual treasure. The flying sword in Xiao Baiyu's hand was also forged with the heaven-opening sword that Jiao Daoren left in the East Sea as the foundation. Although it was only a broken sword, Xiao Baiyu did not hesitate to go through the tribulation together with it to become a natal spiritual treasure. Now that it had reached pure yang, its quality was at least not weaker than any of the 3 heaven-opening swords on the battlefield. Indeed, Xiao Baiyu also knew that he would probably be defeated if this continued. Xiao Baiyu, who had been bitterly defending under the siege of the heaven-opening sword array, suddenly erupted. 8 pitch-black cracks appeared in the surroundings. After absorbing the sword flashes that attacked like a violent storm, the sky-splitting sword chi returned to Xiao Baiyu's hand. A resplendent brilliance instantly broke through the surrounding sword chi brilliance. The fourth pure yang sword Qi soared into the sky. Amidst the exclamations of the surrounding cultivators, Xiao Baiyu instantly launched a counterattack. The situation changed again. Although Xiao Baiyu did not break through the obstruction of the sword array in one fell swoop, he had completely suppressed the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace. Previously, due to the difference between the 3 pure yang sword Qi and the 3 tribulation spiritual treasures, Xiao Baiyu quickly found a flaw in the sword array. This was because the flying sword in Xiao Baiyu's hand also displayed the brilliance of a pure yang spiritual treasure. The sky-splitting sword slashed out, but there was no sword Qi brilliance in the void. Instead, a pitch-black spatial crack was slashed open. Then, 2 sword flashes, one bright and one dark, were forcibly torn out of the sword array's light net by the pitch-black spatial crack. It was such a tiny flaw that Xiao Baiyu instantly tore a huge hole in the sword array. Xiao Baiyu took advantage of the situation and slashed out 8 times. Each sword blocked the 6 people and tried to make up for this flaw. At the same time, he also tried his best to expand the gap in the sword array that he had torn. Seeing that the flaws in the sword formation were getting bigger and bigger, and Xiao Baiyu would soon break out of the encirclement, another unexpected change took place in the sword formation. This set of heaven-opening sword formation was originally a 6-person sword formation formed by a fixed 2-person joint attack. Seeing that Xiao Baiyu was about to forcibly break the siege of the sword formation with the advantage of the heaven-opening sword and his strong pure yang cultivation, the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace suddenly changed the formation. Yan Nanfei and Fan Mingjie, who were originally the main force against Xiao Baiyu, suddenly left with the array. The spectators exclaimed, thinking that the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace were no longer able to stop Xiao Baiyu. Instead, they were going to let him break out of the sword array and then block him. However, although the heaven-splitting sword array was powerful, once someone broke out of the sword array, how much of its power would be left? Would the 6 of them be able to stop Xiao Baiyu's heaven-splitting sword if he broke out of the sword array? No, the 6 swords were not giving up on the sword array. Just as Yan Nanfei and Fan Mingjie retreated to block Xiao Baiyu's path, 2 people suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Baiyu, one on the left and one on the right. It was Xie Tianyang and Su Jin. What? The 2 of them had actually separated from their respective partners. To put it bluntly, the heaven-splitting sword array used 3 sets of heaven-splitting sword techniques as its foundation. If the 2 of them separated from their partners, how could the sword array still be formed? Just when the crowd thought that the heaven-splitting sword array had been thrown into chaos by Xiao Baiyu and that the 6 swords were powerless to continue, Su Jin's cold ice soft sword pierced through Xiao Baiyu's heaven-splitting sword Qi. Like a flying needle with a thread, it instantly sewed up the spatial crack that had been torn open by the heaven-splitting sword Qi. This was not enough to stop Xiao Baiyu from breaking out of the encirclement. Su Jin's actions, after leaving the support of the sword array, were like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in front of Xiao Baiyu. However, without waiting for the crowd to see any clues, Xie Tianyang's sword ignited with raging flames. After the cold ice soft sword eliminated Xiao Baiyu's heaven-splitting sword Qi, it charged towards Xiao Baiyu. It was as if the spatial crack that had been sewn up was ironed once again, making it even smoother and without any twists and turns. However, at the same time, the heaven-splitting sword array was also ironed. The sword array that Xiao Baiyu had broken through suddenly took a turn and Xiao Baiyu was once again pushed back into the sword array. This sudden movement made the cultivators of the various sects unable to take it all in. However, the cultivators of the various sects quickly saw the clues and cried out in surprise. What Xie Tianyang used in that instant was not the raging inferno heaven sun sword, but rather the extreme yang tyrannical sword that was fused with the cold ice soft sword. According to the inheritance rules of the Purple Yang Palace, the 3 heaven-splitting sword techniques and the 6 supreme sword techniques had never been passed down to a single person. There had never been a rule where one person could learn 2 techniques. In fact, other than Jiao Daoren who passed down the heaven-splitting sword, even the founder Laozu and the true spirit cultivators of the Purple Yang Palace could only learn 1 technique by themselves. However, At this moment, Xie Tianyang was impressively using the other heaven-splitting sword technique apart from the raging inferno heaven-sun sword technique, the extreme yang tyrannical sword. The extreme yang tyrannical sword and the cold ice soft sword instantly formed a joint attack. Both Xie Tianyang and Su Jin were not late Dharma adepts, so their joint attack power was far above the combination of Yan Nanfei and Fan Mingjie. Even the attack that Xiao Baiyu had planned for a long time to break through was forcefully blocked by the two of them. Xiao Baiyu had no choice but to be forced back into the sword array once again. This was because the two of them were wielding two heaven-splitting pure yang swords. The combination of the two swords, coupled with the joint attack power, had more than doubled their power. This was also because the pure yang spiritual treasures, the raging inferno heaven sun sword and the cold ice soft sword were not exactly a pair of flying swords. Otherwise, the combination of the two swords could even directly suppress Xiao Baiyu and not force him back. How did he do it? How was he able to master the extreme yang tyrannical sword after mastering the raging inferno heaven sun sword technique? This question caused Xiao Baiyu to cry out in surprise in his heart. The surrounding cultivators who were watching the battle also had the same question. Only Wang Xianqing had a smug look on his face, as if he had already expected this to happen. Of the three sets of joint attack power, the supreme six Dao sword technique could only be passed down to 6 people. This was not because of the restrictions of the sect, but because it was impossible. Before advancing to the pure yang stage, all the cultivators from the Ziyang Palace who tried to master 2 heaven-splitting techniques or 1 set of joint attack power had all failed without exception. This even brought about serious consequences for the cultivators themselves. It was precisely because of this that the Ziyang Palace had set the tradition of only passing down 1 set of techniques to each person. As time passed, the Ziyang Palace had forgotten the reason for this rule and simply carried it out. However, there was no lack of talented people in this world, and Xie Tianyang was undoubtedly one of the best among them. Xie Tianyang was able to successfully master both the Raging Inferno Heaven Sun Sword technique and the Extreme Yang Tyrannical Sword technique. He could even use them without being affected. However, at this moment, Lu Ping was narrowing his eyes and thinking about something after the 6 swords of the Ziyang Palace suddenly changed formation. Lu Ping suddenly sensed a trace of familiarity when Xie Tianyang's sword technique suddenly changed from the Raging Inferno Heaven Sun sword technique to the Extreme Yang Tyrannical sword technique. That was the shadow of the sky-splitting sword technique. That's right, it was exactly so. The reason why Xie Tianyang was able to control 2 heaven-splitting sword techniques of Extreme Yang and Extreme Yang was precisely because of the inspiration from the sky-splitting sword technique. Chapter 1443. Lu Ping had also mastered the Boiling Sky Sword technique, but he rarely used it. This was because although this sword technique was of the water element, it actually contained the fire element. As the saying went, Boiling Sky Sword technique. The word boiling vividly displayed the essence of this supreme sword technique. The bubbling sky sword skill was, in fact, a sword skill that combined water and fire. It didn't seem to have much to do with Xie Tianyang's mastery of the 2 extreme yang and unyielding heaven-opening sword skills, but Lu Ping could vaguely feel that the key to the bubbling sky sword skill's ability to combine water and fire was also the key to Xie Tianyang's mastery of the 2 heaven-opening sword skills. Lu Ping scolded in a low voice. This guy has taken advantage of us. How could we have given him the boiling sky sword technique so easily back then? The sudden change in the heaven-opening sword formation caught Xiao Baiyu off guard. The 2 great cultivators, Su Jin and Xie Tianyang, used the 2 pure yang swords to perform a combined attack as the main attack. For a moment, Xiao Baiyu was once again suppressed to the point where he could only defend himself. The situation was even more embarrassing than when the 3 pure yang spiritual treasure flying swords had appeared. In reality, the weakness of the heaven-splitting sword formation was now even greater. After Xie Tianyang and Su Jin had joined forces, the remaining 2, Guo Wanqing and Tian Buliang, were simply unable to control the 2 heaven-splitting sword techniques like Xie Tianyang. Hence, the 2 of them were actually working together on the surface. Moreover, their mid-dharma level of training was already the biggest weakness of the heaven-splitting sword formation. However, at this time, Xiao Baiyu, who was completely suppressed, had no time to care about such an obvious flaw. In fact, the heaven-opening sword formation of the Xiang Palace had not been flawless from the beginning. From the cultivation of Guolwenqing and Tianbuliang, to the original 3 pairs of pure yang swords, to the current weakest Guolwenqing and Tianbuliang joining forces, the flaws of the sword formation were actually becoming more and more obvious. However, at the same time, as the sword formation changed, the power of the sword formation also became stronger, and the growth of the sword formation's power was always greater than the increase in the number of flaws. This allowed the 6 swords to maintain the suppression of Xiao Baiyu. Even though the flaws in the sword formation were so obvious, Xiao Baiyu was unable to seize the opportunity. The various cultivators Laozu fell silent. At this time, even the weakest of the spectators, the mid-dharma adepts, could clearly see the flaws in the sword formation. However, even Lu Ping himself thought that if it were Xiao Baiyu, he would not be able to seize the opportunity under such a siege. Shi Lianing asked with some uncertainty. Is Xiao Baiyu going to lose? Lu Ping chuckled softly and said, No, I'm afraid the Xiang Palace is going to lose this time. How can that be? Shi Lianing was puzzled. In this battle, the 6 swords of the Xiang Palace clearly have the upper hand. Xiao Baiyu is almost suppressed to the point where he can only defend and has no power to fight back. Shi Lianing looked at the 2 sides in the battle and said boldly, I can see that in less than 5 minutes, Xiao Baiyu's defense will be broken. Lu Ping nodded and said, Even you can see that Xiao Baiyu may not be able to hold on for a long time under this kind of attack. But have you ever thought about how long the 6 swords of Ziyang Palace can last under this kind of attack? Shi Lianing was stunned when he heard this. He looked at the battlefield and said hesitantly, You mean vital energy? Lu Ping said approvingly, That's right. Anyone can see that Xiao Baiyu is definitely at a disadvantage, but I'm afraid there are not many people who can see how long both sides can last. Looking at Lu Ping's smug smile, Shi Lianing rolled his eyes and scolded. Shame on you! At that moment, the battle between the 2 sides became even more intense. The 6 swords of the Xiang Palace launched wave after wave of attacks at Xiao Baiyu, who was trapped in the sword formation. However, although Xiao Baiyu was in a passive position, he was still able to defend himself very firmly. At that moment, the heirs of the various sects who were watching the battle were more or less certain that Xiao Baiyu would not be able to last long. Many of them revealed looks of excitement. To most cultivators, being able to witness the number 1 pure yang cultivator, the sky-splitting sword sage Xiao Baiyu, was probably the first time in their entire cultivation lives that they would ever see such a pinnacle battle again. Only the pure yang cultivators from the various sects, Laozu, could see some clues. The attacks of the 6 swords of the Xiang Palace seemed like a violent storm, but in fact, they were already in their final frenzy. At that moment, the most anxious person was the pure yang cultivators from the Xiang Palace, Wang Xianqing. He naturally knew the situation of the 6 swords very well. The 6 swords of the Xiang Palace were now at the end of their tether. If they could not completely defeat Xiao Baiyu before their vital energy ran out, they would be the ones defeated once Xiao Baiyu caught his breath and launched a counterattack. The pure yang cultivators from the various sects could see some clues, and so could Xiao Baiyu, who was currently being besieged. However, as the dignified sky-splitting sword sage and known as the number 1 pure yang cultivator, he did not expect to be forced into such a miserable state by a few juniors. He had no choice but to defend himself, and rely on his dense vital energy to wear down his opponent's spirit. If he won this way, he would probably be criticized by the cultivation world. However, Xiao Baiyu could not lose. Skyren's current achievements could be said to be tied to Xiao Baiyu alone. If he lost this battle, the sky-splitting sword sage's morale would definitely be affected. What followed would probably be the combined forces of the various sects to kick him while he was down. Therefore, he had to win. No matter how ugly the situation was or how unsightly his methods were, he had to win. Not only did he have to win, but he also had to take the opportunity to completely destroy the heaven-splitting sword formation of the Xiang Palace. At the very least, he had to make the efforts of this generation of the Xiang Palace go down the drain. Only then could he, Xiao Baiyu, do whatever he wanted in the cultivation world without the presence of the true spirits. He was able to kill LV Taiching and destroy the heaven-splitting sword formation that the practitioners of the Xiang Palace had painstakingly cultivated. Now, he could destroy the heaven-splitting sword formation of the Xiang Palace. Especially the most talented direct disciple, who was ranked 6th, could actually break the record of the Xiang Palace since its founding. He was able to master 2 heaven-splitting sword techniques at the late Dharma stage. This person could not be allowed to live. Sigh, who would have thought that the great sky-splitting sword sage would be forced into such a state? Even if he wins, I'm afraid that his reputation as the first pure yang practitioner will be greatly damaged in the cultivation world. Qi Lianing had always been cultivating in the East Sea. Naturally, she regarded the famous Xiao Baiyu as a celestial being. Now that she saw the situation in the arena, her thoughts were probably more representative of what the practitioners of the various sects would think of Xiao Baiyu after the news of this battle spread across the world. However, at this moment, Qi Lianing suddenly felt something strange around her. When she looked at Lu Ping in surprise, she saw that Lu Ping had a serious expression on his face. His eyes were fixed on the 2 dueling parties in the arena. The flashing green and red light even penetrated 3 feet away. His entire body was emitting a heavy aura, like a dragon diving into the water, ready to attack at any time. Qi Lianing was horrified. When she looked at the arena, the 2 dueling parties suddenly changed again. Xiao Baiyu, who had been fighting like a cornered beast, suddenly counterattacked. The sky-splitting sword Qi instantly filled the surroundings, as if it wanted to cut open a new void within 10 feet of him. The tide-like attack launched by the sword formation formed by the 6 swords was instantly annihilated by the sky-splitting sword Qi. The originally aggressive 6 swords of Ziyang Palace were instantly reversed. The entire sword formation completely collapsed the moment Xiao Baiyu suddenly counterattacked. It was as if the 2 sides had formed a tacit understanding after years of practice. How could this be? The cultivators of the various sects exclaimed. Even the pure Yang Laozu, who had seen the clues earlier, did not expect Ziyang Palace to collapse so quickly. It was so fast that they did not even have time to react. Killing intent instantly filled the entire arena. The moment Xiao Baiyu broke through the sword formation, he did not hide his determination to kill the 6 swords. The 6 swords, who were at the end of their flight, could not stop Xiao Baiyu, who was like a god of death. Xiao Baiyu, how dare you! Wang Xuanqing's eyes widened in anger. He was about to intervene, but he did not expect the defeat to come so suddenly. He reacted a step too late. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please stop! Many Laozu from the various sects also exclaimed. At the same time, they seemed to be hesitating on whether or not to intervene. Ah! A scream rang out. Guo Wanqing, who was the closest to Xiao Baiyu, was the first to die under Xiao Baiyu's sword. Wang Xianqing was both shocked and furious. He had already used the full moon sword technique to attack Xiao Baiyu. However, after Xiao Baiyu had casually killed Guo Wanqing, who happened to be right in front of him, he seemed to have expected Wang Xuanqing's attack. He did not even pay attention to him, and dodged his attack. He even turned a blind eye to Yan Nanfei, who was the closest to him. Instead, he took the opportunity to chase after Xie Tianyang, who was the furthest away from him after the sword formation collapsed. This brat must die. Otherwise, after he advances to the pure yang stage, he might be able to fight me alone without this heaven-splitting sword formation. However, what Xiao Baiyu did not know was that the moment the sword formation collapsed, Lu Ping, who had been sitting cross-legged beside Qi Lianing, suddenly disappeared from his sight. Lu Ping's voice was still lingering in his ears. Stay here and don't go anywhere. Wait for me to get you. At this time, Xie Tianyang had already reached the end of his strength. At the moment when the sword formation collapsed, he had already felt that most of Xiao Baiyu's dense killing intent was locked on him. Therefore, Taking advantage of the moment when the sword formation collapsed, Xie Tianyang took the opportunity to escape to the edge of the fighting space, trying to get help from the ancestors of various sects who were watching the battle on the sidelines. However, he underestimated Xiao Baiyu's determination to kill him. Xiao Baiyu even wanted to receive Wang Xuanqing's sword attack to kill him. The heaven-splitting sword swept across the sky. The dense heaven-splitting sword qi did not lock onto Xie Tianyang's aura, but it was able to tear the surrounding void apart. The spatial cracks that annihilated everything made it impossible for Xie Tianyang to escape. The thin true essence in his body was not even enough for him to activate the heaven-splitting sword in his hand. In an instant, Xie Tianyang felt despair. He smiled bitterly in his heart. I never thought that there would come a day when I, Xie Tianyang, would close my eyes and wait for death. Suddenly, a series of ear-piercing explosions rang out in the air. Xie Tianyang knew that this was not only the sound of the sword qi clashing, but also the sound of the intense spatial tremors. Xie Tianyang suddenly felt his body lighten. The annihilation space that had imprisoned him had suddenly disappeared. The intense spiritual energy turbulence allowed Xie Tianyang to immediately confirm that this dueling space, which had been maintained by the various Laozus, was collapsing. A furious shout suddenly rang out in the sky. Lu Tianping, you're trying to stop me! Chapter 1444. Xiao Baiyu was bent on killing Xie Tianyang. At that moment, Xie Tianyang was powerless to resist. Just as he was about to stretch out his neck to be chopped off, he suddenly heard Xiao Baiyu's furious bellow. Lu Tianping, you want to stop me! The heart-palpitating sky-rending sword qi was still being annihilated, but this time, it was the sword qi itself that was being annihilated. Lu Ping had used the sword of true spirit to block Xiao Baiyu's sure-kill strike. The resulting turbulence caused the combat space, which had already reached its limit, to explode. Having escaped death, Xie Tianyang could no longer care about the lack of quintessential essence in his body. He forcefully steered the pure yang sword to stand beside Lu Ping and face Xiao Baiyu. Lu Ping's expression was calm as he said, I've already said that Xie Tianyang is my close friend. Senior, you cannot kill him. If it were any other time, Xiao Baiyu would have already killed anyone who tried to stop him. Even if it was Lu Ping who tried to stop him, Xiao Baiyu would still want to gauge the strength of the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. However, at that moment, even though Xiao Baiyu had used his quintessential essence to wear down the Purple Sun Palace's 6 swords, he had also exhausted himself greatly. Furthermore, Purple Sun Palace's pure Yang Laozu and Wang Xianqing were attacking from behind. The moment Xiao Baiyu was stopped by Lu Ping, he had already lost the opportunity to kill Xie Tianyang. Humph! Xiao Baiyu harumphed coldly. Knowing that he could not stay any longer, he turned around and blocked Wang Xuanqing's attack with his sword. However, Wang Xuanqing's strike caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He turned around and flew into the distance. In the end, Xiao Baiyu was first besieged by 6 swords, then he exchanged blows with Lu Ping, and finally, Wang Xuanqing's sword caused his blood and qi to churn. This was a solid pure yang attack, and Xiao Baiyu could no longer withstand it as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as Wang Xianqing was about to give chase, he saw Xiao Baiyu pointing his sword at Tian Builiang, who was heavily injured after the sword formation was broken. With this sword slash, Tian Builiang, who was completely defenseless, could only wait for death. Wang Xianqing turned pale with fright. One of the Purple Sun Palace's 6 swords had already been destroyed. If another one died, the heaven-splitting sword formation would probably have no hope of recovering. In desperation, Wang Xianqing had to divert the sword momentum to intercept Xiao Baiyu's heaven-splitting sword qi to save Tian Builiang. However, Xiao Baiyu took advantage of this time to transform into an escape light. Just as the battle space collapsed and a huge change occurred on the battlefield, the relationship between the cultivators of the various sects seemed to be extremely subtle at this moment. Some were watching from the sidelines, while others were eager to give it a try. However, apart from Lu Ping and Wang Xianqing, no one tried to save any of the 6 swords who were powerless to fight back. Instead, the cultivators of the other sacred lands joined forces to intercept and kill Xiao Baiyu. Unexpectedly, the 7 fans Laozu, Full Moon Laozu, and Feng Lu Laozu secretly stopped them. Lu Ping killed Xiao Baiyu but didn't save Lu Jian. But in an instant, he clearly saw the plan in the hearts of all sects on the scene. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly attacked again. The sword of true spirit pierced through the void. Liang Jianfei, who was about to leave with his granduncle master, suddenly heard an explosion in the void beside him. Liang Jianfei was so frightened that he hurriedly shook his sword to defend himself. However, he saw a tiny flying needle being chopped down from the void by a sword chi. The remaining power was not enough to hurt Liang Jianfei, so he casually cut it down with his sword. Liang Jianfei broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't notice who was sneaking up on him, but he knew that if it weren't for Lu Ping's sword, even if he didn't die, he would probably be seriously injured by this flying needle. Liang Jianfei's eyes swept across the sky above the Feiliang mountain, but he still couldn't find who was sneaking up on him. At this time, the 7 fans Laozu and the others also noticed that Liang Jianfei was being attacked. They understood Lu Ping's intention, so they hurriedly protected him and retreated together. Liang Jianfei had no choice but to cup his fists towards Lu Ping and follow the cultivators of the Profound Sky sect, Heavenly Moon sect, Spirit Beast sect, and other sects to the east. Xie Tianyang saw that Lu Ping saved him and became enemies with Xiao Baiyu, but in the blink of an eye, he also foiled the plot to kill Liang Jianfei. He couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lu Yu?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "You're my brother, so I naturally have to save you. That Liang Jianfei is an ally of our sect, so I naturally have to save him." Xie Tianyang sighed and said, "There's no need to say thanks between us. It's just that you've offended Xiao Baiyu by saving me this time. I'm afraid you'll be blamed by both your sect and your allies." As he spoke, Wang Xianqing had already gathered the other 4 direct disciples. Xie Tianyang also went to meet up with them. Although Xiao Baiyu was seriously injured, the Purple Sun Palace had lost in the Battle of Swords. Tian Buliang had died, so the 6 swords of the Purple Sun Palace were now missing one. The heaven-splitting sword formation had been destroyed, but the Purple Sun Palace's losses would come in the future. However, Wang Xianqing was furious that the sects didn't save the scattered 6 swords, allowing them to be hunted down by Xiao Baiyu, which was worse than losing one of the 6 swords. However, it was at this moment that Lu Ping's light suddenly stopped and stopped moving forward. Qi Lianing was confused and asked, "Why did you stop? What happened?" Qi Lianing suddenly stopped talking because she saw that Lu Ping's face was as gloomy as water. Even when he faced Xiao Baiyu that day, Lu Ping did not look like this. Lu Ping ignored Qi Lianing's question and slowly turned around to look around. He said in a deep voice, "What did I do to deserve such a grand weight from everyone?" Qi Lianing trembled and hurriedly looked around. At the same time, she also scanned the surroundings with her divine sense. However, the empty surroundings did not give her any clues. However, not only did Qi Lianing not heave a sigh of relief, the shock on her face intensified. "Ha ha, fellow Taoist Yuan Fei, it seems that your sect's numinous treasure is not as magical as you say." A voice came from the void. It seemed that it was not too far from Lu Ping and the others. That's because this kid's divine sense is very different from ordinary people. If it were you, fellow Taoist Yu Heng, I'm afraid you might not be able to detect it even if we ambushed you from behind." Following that, another voice sounded again. It was obviously the fellow Taoist Yuan Fei who had spoken earlier. "All right, the 2 of you, the most important thing now is to kill this kid as soon as possible to prevent the pure Yang cultivators from other sects from finding out, especially Qi Fan, Full Moon, and the others who are currently being held back by the 2 pure Yang cultivators from our sect and the Crystal Palace. This kid has the strength to fight against the pure Yang cultivators. Once he deduces it and the pure Yang cultivators realize it, the cultivation world of the Central Plains will be instantaneous for them." As soon as this voice sounded, Lu Ping seemed to suddenly understand and said coldly, Taishian sex would ya? Lu Ping immediately guessed the identity of the person who had come, which seemed to surprise the person hiding in the void. After a moment of silence, the previous voice sounded again. Lu Daoyu is really powerful. I can't believe you can't forget me. It seems that today, Your Excellency, must fall here, or we will not be able to sleep and eat in peace. Lu Ping's eyes continued to sweep the void around him. A 3-foot-long cold light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes as he sneered. Who else is there? Come out at once, Yuhing of the Crystal Palace, Yuhing of the Wishing School, Wujia of the Taishian sect, who else is there? Just the three of you can't stop me. Lu Tianping, did you ever think that this day would come? A sinister voice sounded, and Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed. He said, So Senior Dongi has been hiding in the Central Plains all this time. No wonder I couldn't find any trace of Your Excellency in the North Sea. However, although 4 great practitioners are not weak when they join forces, I'm afraid it will still be difficult for them to keep me here. Ha 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 ha, the North Sea Water Sword Celestial is really heroic. How about we add in the old man? A rough voice sounded in the void, but it sounded quite old. However, Lu Ping could feel from the sudden burst of force in the void that it was also a great practitioner at the peak of the late Dharma Law's stage. Haha, the North Sea Jinling is able to have such a reputation in the world of practitioners. A small part of the reason is because of this one person. If we leave him here today, the Jinling is just a small sect in the North Sea after all. The 6th great practitioner at the late Dharma Law's stage spoke, and Lu Ping could no longer maintain the calm expression on his face. This was because at this moment, Lu Ping's divine will had finally broken through the cover of the spirit treasures that had previously concealed the figures of the people. This time, there were not 6 people waiting to ambush and kill Lu Ping, but 14. Chapter 1445. Lu Ping had originally wanted to find out who had set up such a trap to kill him. However, when he had secretly used his divine will to break through the secret concealment technique of this spirit treasure from the Crystal Palace, he had suddenly discovered that there were as many as 14 adepts who had ambushed him. Just who was it that was able to calculate his path of return and lay down an inescapable net here? At this time, Lu Ping could not care less about this question. He had to break out of the encirclement as soon as possible before these people appeared. At this time, a huge white jade lotus suddenly bloomed under Lu Ping's feet. The space that had originally been locked down suddenly calmed down as the white jade lotus bloomed. Oh no, he's trying to escape! The moment the lotus formation under Lu Ping's feet bloomed, he reached out and grabbed Qi Lianying, who was beside him. The two of them suddenly turned into a cloud of water vapor and dissipated with the wind. You think you can escape? The space in the direction that Lu Ping had escaped shook, and the surrounding spiritual qi gathered. A huge ping bird spread its wings and circled around. With a long cry, all the water vapor in the surroundings all gathered into the mouth of the ping bird. At the same time, on the left and right sides of the space where Lu Ping had previously been standing, 3 Dharma adepts appeared. In the direction that Lu Ping had flown from, there were also 3 streaks of light that appeared in the void. There was a total of 9 Dharma adepts, after Lu Ping had suddenly broken out of the encirclement, no longer able to hide their bodies. And at this time, the huge ping bird that had blocked the path of Lu Ping and the others suddenly let out a frightened cry. When everyone looked over, they saw that the body of the ping bird had suddenly been neatly cut in half from the center. A cloud of water vapor passed through the center of the ping bird that had been cut in half, leaving only a faint blue sword light that flashed before disappearing. Chase, he can't escape! The 9 streaks of light either chased directly or circled around from both sides, only following behind Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping and Qi Lianying had turned into water vapor to escape, Qi Lianying was still a burden to Lu Ping, causing him to be unable to use the full power of the water transformation technique, and unable to escape from the divine will of the others. When Lu Ping had just broken through the obstruction of the spiritual ping bird, a cold sword light had already cut through the void, covering half of the sky where Lu Ping had escaped. However, a sword light suddenly appeared out of nowhere and began to split. In the blink of an eye, it turned into 120,000 sword lights that swam in the void like a swarm of ants devouring an elephant. In the blink of an eye, the sword light was completely wiped out. Lu Ping had already taken the opportunity to break through another cultivator's blockade after the sky full of sword rays. Qi Lianying, who had been dragged behind Lu Ping, sighed and said, "Let me go, or either of us will be able to escape. Cut the crap!" Lu Ping shouted coldly, and his grip on Qi Lianying tightened. The streaks of light behind them were getting closer and closer, and so were the streaks of light that had circled around them. The two great cultivators who had been blocked by Lu Ping were also unwilling to give up and chased closely behind Lu Ping. A skylark and a flying sword broke through the void and chased after them again. At the same time, in the sky above the Yulan River, 3 streams of demonic qi rose into the sky and blocked in front of Lu Ping. One of them shouted, "Lu Tianping, you can't escape death today even if you grow wings. The 4th elder of the Tenma people." Lu Ping's expression changed. He didn't expect that there were 3 demonic qi cultivators hiding in the Yulan River. His expression became even colder and fiercer. "Good, good, good. Very good. In order to kill me, even the demonic qi cultivators have been mobilized." Lu Ping shouted, but the streaks of light didn't slow down at all. They didn't slow down because of the 3 demonic qi cultivators in front of them. Instead, they sped up. Seeing that Lu Ping wasn't panicking at all and was charging straight at them, the 4th elder of the Tenma people panicked for no reason. He couldn't help but think of how Lu Ping had defeated him when he was only at the mid-Dharma stage and became a great cultivator. Lu Ping had used him as a stepping stone to become famous. But now that the cultivators of various sects had gathered to set up such a killing trap, Ma the Great naturally didn't want his plan to kill Lu Tianping to fail because he was the last weak point. "Rush up and stop him!" Ma the Great roared. He led the 2 Tenma people cultivators beside him and rushed towards Lu Ping. "Idiot, don't rush!" A few roars came from the streaks of light behind and beside Lu Ping. At the same time, these streaks of light didn't care if they would expose a flaw in the formation that was surrounding Lu Ping and directly rushed towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping sneered and said, "It's too late." Lu Ping suddenly broke away from the magical power of transforming into water. He then spun around and the Sword of True Spirit had already turned into 9 water dragons that rushed in all directions. Among them, there were a total of 6 water dragons that rushed towards Ma the Great. The 6 water dragons didn't wait for Ma the Great and the others to block them. Suddenly, after the 6 water dragons flew out from the sword light in Lu Ping's hand, 3 of them actually connected with each other and instantly devoured each other, forming a complete dragon-shaped sword qi. As it gathered together and opened its mouth, Ma the Great felt as if the entire void was collapsing and condensing. The mouth of the strange water dragon in front of him seemed to be expanding, as if it was going to devour the heavens and the earth. Ma the Great panicked. He stretched his hands to both sides and in an instant, he grabbed the 2 mid-Dharma adepts of the Tenma people who came with him by the back of their necks. The 2 of them instantly couldn't move. The 2 Tenma people cultivators seemed to suddenly understand and cried out in shock. "Elder, what are you doing?" Ma the Great didn't dare to hesitate. He shook his arms and the 2 Tenma people cultivators flew towards the mouth of the strange water dragon. Midway, the physical bodies of the 2 cultivators suddenly dissipated. 2 Dharma power of the heavenly horses raised their necks and neighed as they rushed towards the strange water dragon. In an instant, it was as if there were tens of thousands of galloping horses. 1 strange water dragon and 2 Dharma power of the 2 Tenma people cultivators fought against each other. The 2 Tenma people cultivators' Dharma power burned the last of their life force to unleash a power that could actually block Lu Ping's sword of opening the heavens. Ma the Great took advantage of the situation and retreated, breaking out of the strange water dragon's mouth. However, at that moment, Lu Ping had already rushed over. When Ma the Great saw Lu Ping's twisted and ferocious expression, he became even more flustered and instinctively wanted to dodge. "Damn it, you can't do anything right!" The cultivators who were chasing after Lu Ping immediately cursed. Several spells had already broken through the void and were chasing after Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping had been breaking out of the encirclement with ease, Mao the Great was still able to stop Lu Ping for a moment. In just that moment, the cultivators behind Lu Ping had already caught up. A huge bell suddenly rose up above Lu Ping's head. A statue that looked exactly like the strange water dragon's sword energy from before moved gracefully across the surface of the huge bell. In addition to the sharp and auspicious clouds carved on the surface of the bell, the vivid and lifelike strange water dragon looked as though it was riding on the clouds. 7 to 8 spells that were not inferior to great spells, some of them even had the power of peerless spells, smashed towards Lu Ping. Quang! A loud noise suddenly rang out from the sky, spreading hundreds of li away. The weaker cultivators who were chasing after Lu Ping were momentarily stunned. By the time they recovered, they saw that Lu Ping had already broken through Mao the Great's obstruction and had arrived at the Yulon River. Next, they saw Lu Ping suddenly fling Qi Lianying, who had been tightly held by Lu Ping, out from behind Lu Ping, as though he was riding on the clouds. Qi Lianying was flung hundreds of zhang away by Lu Ping. Hurry up and leave! Staying here will only be a burden! Qi Lianying's beautiful, crimson silhouette was left behind in midair. After that, she fell into the Yulon River, disappearing without a trace. At this time, because Lu Ping paused for a moment after flinging Qi Lianying away, the cultivators behind him had once again caught up to him and surrounded him. He, Yuan Fei of the Crystal Palace, Yuhing of the Wishing School, Shui Jiro, Dongyi of the Blue Sea Sect, Lingxiu of the Spirit Martial Sect, Wujia of the Taishan Sect, the fourth elder of the Tenma people, Ru Shan of the Huta Sect, Yun Tian of the Flying Cloud Pavilion, and these 3 should also be cultivators from overseas. But I don't know which sect they are from. 12 great cultivators, what a grand scene. Lu Ping is greatly flattered. But I'm curious. Since all of you are gathered here, I believe that the magnetic stone plot must involve many people. Why didn't you call a few pure young cultivators? Chapter 1446. Haha, the 3 of us are indeed cultivators from overseas. To be exact, we are cultivators from the East Sea. I am Yuanan from the Crystal Palace. Greetings, North Sea Water Sword Deity. A great cultivator standing beside the slightly plump Yuanfei Laozu said with a smile. Lu Ping replied with an, "Oh," and said to the other 2 unfamiliar cultivators beside him, "Then these 2 must be fellow cultivators from the Purple Talisman Pavilion and Gale Thunder Island?" A purple-browed man beside Yuanan Laozu laughed and said, "I am Qing Yuanqi from the Purple Talisman Pavilion." "Greetings." A short and stocky cultivator standing beside him said in a low voice, "Feng Zhonglei from Gale Thunder Island." 12 great cultivators had joined forces to kill Lu Ping. However, such a grand plan involved no less than 8 sects, including 2 sacred grounds. Therefore, this plan could be said to have involved many people. Moreover, all of these people had enmity or conflict with Lu Ping or Zhenling. However, why were the cultivators who surrounded and killed Lu Ping only at the late Dharma stage? With Lu Ping's current strength, if the Crystal Palace and Wishing School simply sent a few pure yang cultivators to kill him, wouldn't they have a higher chance of success? Although Lu Ping had such doubts, the joint attack of 12 great cultivators still put Lu Ping in an unprecedented life-threatening situation. Fellow cultivators, don't listen to this person's nonsense. This is a rare opportunity. We can take this chance to kill this person. If he becomes a troublemaker in the future, he will be a great threat to us. Moreover, we have already revealed ourselves in front of him today. Even if we let him go today, he will definitely seek revenge in the future. Dongyi Laozu was obviously the most enthusiastic person among these people about killing Lu Ping. Patriarch Dongyi's words clearly gained the approval of these great cultivators from the various sections. They had set up this trap for Lu Tianping precisely because they were afraid of his cultivation and strength. Now that he was able to fight a pure yang cultivator despite being only a great cultivator, once he advanced to become a pure yang cultivator, no one in the cultivation world would be able to stop him. However, Lu Ping knew the importance of striking first after being surrounded by these people. Just as Dong Laozu finished speaking, Lu Ping suddenly shouted and said, "Then let me kill you first!" A cold light flashed out before Lu Ping's shout could be heard. The cold light morphed into a roaring Jiao dragon in midair and slammed into Dong Yi Grand Ancestor. Dong Laozu panicked. He used the Sea Transfer Medallion to absorb the water of the Yulon River and used the vast sea art to transform it into a huge dragon whale, which crashed towards the cold light dragon. Dong Laozu naturally knew that he could not fight against Lu Ping alone. When he looked up, he saw that the child's facial features were 70% similar to Lu Tianping, and his level of practice had already reached the peak of the middle Dharma stage. After his attack had missed, he was now chasing after Ma the Great, like a tiger watching its prey. Ma the Great's attack had been thwarted, but there were still other people who were attacking Lu Ping with their magical powers. The moment Yu Heng Laozu of Wishing School made his move, Lu Ping saw through him, and he shouted, "So, it turns out that the person who provoked me in the West River area is you. I'm afraid that the reputation of Wishing School has been completely ruined by you." Yu Heng Laozu's face darkened, and he said in a low voice, "It's useless to say more. Today is the day that you, Lu Tianping, will die." The spirit treasure in Yu Heng Laozu's hand was replaced by a green, mountain-shaped spirit treasure. The moment it left his hand, it transformed into a 33 feet tall mountain, falling towards Lu Ping's head. The moment Yu Heng Laozu made his move, Rong Mountain Laozu of the Hutu school let out a great roar and said, "Yu Heng, my friend, I am here to help you again." Rong Mountain Laozu pushed his hands forward and pressed down. Instantly, the 33 feet tall, green mountain was dyed with a layer of yellow earth. Along with a thunderous rumbling noise, Lu Ping's body had already been restrained by a tremendous downward force, which made it extremely difficult for him to move. The dragon-shaped statue, which was hovering above Lu Ping's head, screamed out in a voice that only Lu Ping could hear, "Think of a way! I don't want to be crushed into pieces." A faint blush flashed across Lu Ping's face. The Jinyuan inside his body was like a flood that was blocked by a dam, and was preparing for the last moment of his life. All of a sudden, Lu Ping let out a great roar. 12 beams of multicolored light darted out from Lu Ping's body, and the yellow light that had been filling up the air was instantly shattered by the appearance of the 12 beams of multicolored light. At the same time, the enormous mountain that was falling down suddenly paused in the air. The 12 beams of multicolored light stood in different directions, resonating with the formation pattern of the lotus under Lu Ping's feet, firmly holding the falling mountain in the air. However, at this moment, a violent shaking came from the top of Lu Ping's head. The multicolored light of the 12 gentian beads flickered, and they were almost crushed by the mountain spirit treasure. It turned out that after Lu Ping had just resisted the 2 attacks of Yu Heng Laozu and Rong Shan Laozu, Ling Su Laozu of the spirit martial sect seized the opportunity. While most of the power of the formation pattern of the white feather lotus was used to support the mountain of the gentian beads, Ling Su Laozu of the spirit martial sect broke the refining barrier in one fell swoop. 5 of the 9 dragon shadows on the wall of the 9-dragon bell were annihilated at once before the blow was barely blocked. Lu Ping suddenly suffered a heavy blow. Although he was not hurt, he had fought with 11 great cultivators in succession. Even as strong as Lu Ping was, the Jinyuan in his body was in a situation where he could not support it for a while. The blow of Ling Su Laozu made Lu Ping's situation even worse. The situation that he had struggled to maintain was almost ruined by this blow. Lu Ping spat out a mouthful of blood mist, but he took the opportunity to crush a top-grade spirit stone. With his own blood as the guide, he held a golden scissors in his hand. "Ling Su of the spirit martial sect, you deserve to die." This blow of Ling Su Laozu almost made Lu Ping fall into a hopeless situation, which naturally made Lu Ping extremely angry. He did not hesitate to use his own blood and profound qi to activate the pure yang spirit treasure. The surging pure yang qi constantly destroyed the soul of Ling Su Laozu, who had rushed to Lu Ping. Even the great cultivators who were besieging Lu Ping exclaimed, "Pure yang spirit treasure! It's pure yang spirit treasure!" Chapter 1447. Just when the practitioners of various sects besieging Lu Ping were still shocked by Lu Ping's sudden pure yang spirit treasure, Lingxiu Laozu, who wanted to severely injure Lu Tianping with one blow and take the first merit, was scared out of his wits. Pure yang spirit treasure, was it something he could withstand? Friends of the Tao, help me! Lingxiu Laozu screamed in horror and struggled to retreat. Lu Ping smiled fiercely and said, "It's too late to escape now." The white jade lotus barrier that had just been broken by Lingxiu Laozu closed in an instant. Lingxiu Laozu rushed out like crazy. This time, he broke through the white jade lotus barrier again, but his figure was slowed down by the barrier. This slight delay was more than enough. The hand holding the pure yang spirit treasure opened and closed, and the two blade lights instantly closed. Lingxiu Laozu's figure was still flying out, but suddenly it was cut in the middle. The part below the waist drew a parabola downward, and the part above the waist flew up. In fact, when Lingxiu Laozu was flying away, he had tried his best to use the first tribulation spirit treasure in his hand to block the attack. However, in the face of the power of the pure yang spirit treasure, the first tribulation spirit treasure in his hand was cut in two like tofu. When the raging blade light cut Lingxiu Laozu in two, the violent pure yang qi instantly broke through his heart core space along his blood vessels. The second tribulation dharma form hiding in it did not even have time to escape before it was cut into ashes by the surging pure yang qi. Lingxiu Laozu became the first sacrifice to kill Lu Ping this time. However, Lu Ping's thunderous attack not only did not frighten these great practitioners, but also aroused the greed of these people because of Lu Ping's endless spirit treasures during this period of siege. Even sacred land cultivators like Yuan Fei, Yuan An, Yu Heng and Shui Jiro found it hard to control themselves in the face of so many spirit treasures. And now, with the appearance of a pure yang spiritual treasure, the greed of the various sects' old ancestors was triggered to the extreme. This Lu Tianping actually has a pure yang spiritual treasure. This pair of scissors looks familiar. Could it be the two halves of the Northern Alliance's numinous treasure that was originally in Chu's possession? Isn't that a second tribulation spirit treasure? After Chu Yi fell, that spirit treasure disappeared. This one is obviously a pure yang, and the color doesn't seem right. That's nothing. Have you forgotten the great battle at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain years ago? The thunder tribulation of the pure yang spiritual treasure struck? The wishing school failed in the end. Even half of the water source that was connected to the school was cut off. Could it be that the thunder tribulation of the pure yang was caused by the pair of scissors in Lu Tianping's hand? Now you understand. The plan of the wishing school was not so much ruined by Xiao Baiyu and others. I'm afraid it was better to say that Lu Tianping took advantage of it in the end. A small part of the water source. No wonder this person's cultivation improved so fast. Wait, this person can cut off a small part of the water source. Doesn't it mean that this person has a spirit treasure imitation similar to the cauldron of heaven and earth? This person was known as Treasure Boy in the North Sea. In today's battle, he showed 4 or 5 spirit treasures. This person must die today. These spirit treasures should be ours. Although Lu Ping suddenly took out the pure yang spiritual treasure to kill Lingxiu Laozu, the appearance of the pure yang spiritual treasure did not alert the 11 grand practitioners who besieged Lu Ping. Instead, it intensified their greed. Element Fatty Laozu shouted, "Lu Tianping, how dare you!" That year, when Chu of the Northern Alliance was attacked and died, his spirit treasure was cut in two and disappeared. So it was all your doing? Let me ask you, old man. At that time, Mara's army was besieging the Phantom Island. Did you collude with Mara's army? Or did you Jinling have some secret plot? Lu Ping snorted coldly. The sword of true spirit suddenly collapsed and turned into 9 flood dragons. Once again, Element Fatty Laozu was caught off guard. Yuan An, Qing Yuanqi, and Feng Zhonglei hurried to help him. If you want to blame someone, you can always find a pretext. Today, you want to kill Lu Ping. Have you thought about who you want to bury with you? Lu Ping held the pure yang spiritual treasure in his hand. His eyes swept across the Laozu who besieged him. For a moment, no one dared to look at Lu Ping in the eye. 12 grand practitioners besieged Lu Ping. If they could really work together, Lu Ping would not have been able to resist until now. It was precisely because Lu Ping knew that these people had their own plans. They were waiting for others to die so they could reap the benefits. That was why Lu Ping was able to fend off so many people's encirclement. And after Lu Ping suddenly cast out a pure yang spirit treasure and killed Spirit Su ancestor, not only did it not arouse the other great cultivators' common hatred, but it also made them even more greedy. As a result, they were even more determined to let Lu Ping and the others die while they followed behind to reap the benefits. Lu Ping shouted to make these people even more afraid. With Lu Ping's strength comparable to that of a pure yang, and now that he had the pure yang spiritual treasure, it would not be easy to kill Lu Ping without leaving a few lives. But the key was whose life should be left, and who should be the last one to reap the benefits. Wuxing School's Yuheng Laozu seemed to understand something at this moment. He asked loudly, Lu Tianping, the person hiding in the water vein at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain was you. Did you kill our formation great master Jin Chan Laozu? Did you get this pure yang spiritual treasure because you stole half of our water transformation talisman? Also, did you kill the water transformation ape? In fact, when Lu Ping used the pure yang spiritual treasure, the unsolved cases that had been left in the cultivation world over the years had come to light. The battle at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain could be said to be a contest of power between all the pure yang forces in the cultivation world. Everyone present naturally knew about such a big event. Yu Heng Laozu's question was meaningless to them. It was just a kind of righteous venting. Only the water transformation ape at the end made them somewhat puzzled. However, when Yu Heng Laozu mentioned the water transformation ape, Lu Ping already understood that he was referring to the water ape weapon spirit of the cauldron of heaven and earth. In reality, whether it was the Linglong wine cauldron, the sword of true spirit, or the 2 pieces of pure yang spiritual treasure, the reason why they could become second tribulation spiritual treasures so quickly was because even if Lu Ping wholeheartedly nurtured them with his own vital energy, he might not be able to improve their quality so quickly. The most important reason was that during the battle at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain, Lu Ping had used all kinds of spiritual treasures to kill the water ape weapon spirit in the water vein. His subordinates had all swallowed the water ape weapon spirit's source, which caused their quality to improve so quickly. It should be known that the water ape weapon spirit was one of the 5 great weapon spirits of the cauldron of heaven and earth. Lu Ping said mockingly, "You are really slow to realize." Yu Heng Laozu said angrily, "Outrageous, then go die." Yu Heng Laozu suddenly rose into the sky and landed on the 33-meter-tall emerald green mountain. Lu Ping felt an unparalleled force descend from the sky. The white jade lotus formation spirit's light flickered, and the 12 gentian beads that held up the giant mountain kept falling. Ring, ring, ring! Seeing her martial uncle going all out, Shueijiro naturally did not want to fall behind. She kept ringing the rain bell in her hand like a soul-summoning bell. Every ringing sound penetrated Lu Ping's divine sense, trying to interfere with Lu Ping's control over the spiritual treasures in his hand. "You still haven't made any progress," Lu Ping sneered. A blue sky curtain suddenly fell from above Lu Ping's head. Above the clouds, a golden ping kept circling around the 9-dragon bell. Seeing this, Shueijiro snorted coldly. The watery mist in the air condensed into a gigantic sky eagle, which clawed towards the golden ping. However, before the sky eagle could approach, Lu Ping pointed his finger at the sky eagle with a taunting look. Instantly, the sky eagle, which was condensed from watery mist, exploded into a puff of watery mist once again. "Your water-controlling skill is still too weak." Before he could enjoy Shueijiro's angry and humiliated look, Lu Ping raised his hand and waved his hand. Aeon water divine thunder descended and merged with the water darkness sword, transforming into the thunder-shocking sword spell. Rome Mountain Laozu, who was trying to help Laozu again, was forced back. At the same time, Lu Ping threw out a purple jade bracelet. The bracelet expanded and encircled Lu Ping in the middle. After that, an enormous purple jade bracelet was pushed outwards, forcing Yun Tian, Wu Jie Dongyi and the others, who were trying to attack Lu Ping, back. However, at this time, Yu Heng Laozu, who was already at the top of the Emerald Peak, shouted, "Fall!" The entire peak suddenly sank again above Lu Ping's head. At this time, Lu Ping was using many spirit treasures to resist the siege of 11 great cultivators. This attack from Yu Heng Laozu made Lu Ping feel as if his heart was suddenly hit by a hammer. His whole body sank down, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. Bean-sized beads of sweat seeped from Lu Ping's temples and quickly covered his forehead. Lu Ping smiled coldly. He looked up at the emerald peak that covered the sky above him and said, "Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish. Great Gentian Formation, Suppressing Mountain." Following Lu Ping's shout, the 100 Origin Lotus Formation under his feet suddenly shone brightly. The white jade lotus flowers in the surroundings bloomed one after another, and dense formation runes flashed on the formation. The 12 gentian pearls that originally supported the emerald peak shone with a brilliant 5-colored light. At the same time, the sword whirlpool formed by the thin water-flowing sword suddenly collapsed. Countless sword lights crisscrossed, causing Laozu and the others to be thrown into confusion. The pure yang spirit treasure that had been expanding and contracting outside was suddenly opened and closed several times by Lu Ping, causing the great cultivators to jump up and down in fright. The flood dragon formed by the sword of true spirit instantly shrank back around Lu Ping's body and firmly protected him. The sword of true spirit once again disappeared into the void. "Not good, this Lu Tianping is trying to escape." "No, he's not escaping. Quickly attack, this kid is putting up a turtle shell." A 5-colored space immediately formed. Yu Heng Laozu, who was sitting cross-legged on the top of the emerald peak, panicked and suddenly felt the giant peak he was sitting on collapse. Chapter 1448. The natal gentian formation was formed in an instant. Before Yu Heng and Laozu could react, they fell into the gentian formation together with the emerald peak. Lu Ping felt it was a pity. He had secretly set up the gentian formation to attract more people to come close, and then catch them all in one fell swoop. However, none of these great cultivators were fools. Especially after Lu Ping released the pure yang spirit treasure and killed Lingshu Laozu with a thunderous blow, these Laozu all had their own thoughts. No one was willing to take the lead to kill Lu Ping. Even Yu Heng and Laozu were sure that the spirit treasure under them had suppressed Lu Ping in advance, and they were confident that the spirit treasure was strong enough. That was why they dared to combine the spirit treasure with themselves and tried to completely defeat Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, they fell into Lu Ping's trap in the end. As the most important natal formation of Lu Ping, the 13 formation treasures had been nurtured by Lu Ping's Jinqi for the longest time. The most important one, the white feather lotus formation, was already a first tribulation spirit treasure. But in order to hide his strength, Lu Ping had always used it as a defensive spirit treasure. Unfortunately, the 12 gentian beads were one. If Lu Ping couldn't use them to pass the thunder test one by one, he could only use the 12 gentian beads to summon the thunder test at the same time and distribute the power of the first spirit treasure thunder test on the 12 gentian beads. In this way, each gentian bead could not compete with a spirit treasure alone. But if the 12 gentian beads gathered together, its power was even stronger than a second tribulation spirit treasure. And when the 12 gentian beads combined with the white feather lotus formation and operated the gentian formation, Lu Ping was even confident that the power of the gentian formation was not weaker than the pure yang spirit treasure. At least the mantis in 2 parts asserted that unless the pure yang Laozu controlled it, it was impossible to break the siege of the gentian formation. Naturally, Aliath Laozu could not compare to the pure yang spirit treasure. Although the emerald peak was an excellent spirit treasure, it was still a first tribulation spirit treasure. Therefore, when Aliath Laozu fell into Lu Ping's trap, although Lu Ping had to withstand the fierce attacks of the 10 great cultivators outside the gentian formation, inside the gentian formation, Aliath Laozu's emerald peak collapsed under the suppressing mountain, magical power of the Gentian formation. Even Alioth Laozu, a great cultivator, could not last longer than this spirit treasure, and was directly crushed into a pile of bloody mud in the formation. However, at this moment, Lu Ping did not have it easy either. Although the Gentian formation had the power comparable to the pure Yang spirit treasure that was within the formation. Outside the formation, he was besieged by the 10 great cultivators. Even if Lu Ping operated the formation to continuously dissolve and weaken the cultivators' besiegement, he did not have the strength to use other methods to resist. Fortunately, Alioth Laozu's death was only in the blink of an eye. In the natal Gentian formation, 12 rays of colorful light suddenly appeared and shot in all directions. At the same time, the Gentian formation suddenly dissipated as if it had collapsed. At this moment, Lu Ping was suspended on the white feather lotus formation under his feet. However, he looked extremely disheveled. Dongi Laozu's expression lit up and he shouted loudly, "The formation is broken! This Lu Tianping is at his wit's end. Fellow Taoists, kill the enemy in an instant!" After saying that, he took the lead and rushed towards Lu Ping. There were a few others who had the same idea as Dongi Laozu. Wujia Laozu, Rongshan Laozu, Ma Si's great group, Feng Zhonglei and the Crystal Palace's Yuan all rushed towards Lu Ping at the same time. At this moment, Shui Jiro suddenly screamed, "Lu Tianping, where is my martial uncle Yu Heng? Did you kill him?" At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that Yu Heng Laozu of Wishing School, who had been trapped in Lu Ping's formation, was nowhere to be seen. The few great cultivators present couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. The few great cultivators who were rushing towards Lu Ping also had a hint of hesitation on their faces. Only Dongi Laozu still clenched his teeth and resolutely rushed towards Lu Ping. If Lu Tianping didn't die today, then Tsunghai sect would definitely be destroyed by Jinling. In this battle, everyone could retreat, but he couldn't. After the spiritual treasure Emerald Peak destroyed by Lu Ping shattered, it was still a decent refining spiritual material. As for Yu Heng Laozu, who had turned into a pool of blood, it had been casually buried by Lu Ping under the spirit tree in the House of Gold. In any case, it was the essence of a great cultivator's flesh and blood. Lu Ping didn't mind being a bit more cruel to his enemies. However, at this moment, Yuanfei Laozu, who was in the Crystal Palace, suddenly realized that the 12 gentian pearls that had flown out from the Yuan transfer formation had not collapsed because of the formation's collapse. After the 12 pearls had flown out of the encirclement formed by the 10 great cultivators, they had strangely floated in midair. The 12 gentian pearls were distributed in different directions, forming a counter-encirclement around the crowd of cultivators. With more than 1,000 years of experience, Yuanfei Laozu instinctively sensed that something was wrong. The formation just now had not collapsed because of the crowd's encirclement, but because Lu Tianping had purposely dispelled the formation. This was to set up an even larger formation to trap everyone inside. What an arrogant Lu Tianping of the North Sea! What was he trying to do? Could it be that he alone could trap and kill 10 great Dharma adepts? Yuanfei Laozu was shocked and angry at first, but then he felt that a huge crisis was about to befall him. In a panic, Yuanfei Laozu grabbed Qing Yuanqi, who was about to join the crowd in attacking Lu Ping. He shouted, "Retreat quickly, this is a trap set by Lu Tianping." As Yuanfei Laozu spoke, his fat body turned into a beam of light. Like a fat fish swimming in the sea, he instantly rushed out of the encirclement formed by the 12 gentian pearls. Qing Yuanqi seemed to have a lot of trust in Yuanfei Laozu. He followed closely behind Yuanfei Laozu and also rushed out of the encirclement. At the same time, Yuntian Laozu also rushed out. This made Yuanfei Laozu, who was the first to come out, take a good look at them. Just as Yuanfei Laozu felt that something was wrong, Lu Ping, who was floating in the middle of the lotus formation, suddenly laughed. "You only realized it now? It's too late." The white feather lotus formation, which had originally been like a dead object under Lu Ping's feet, suddenly flashed with light again. The 12 gentian pearls also shone brightly in the air a few hundred feet away. It was as if 12 full moons had appeared in the sky. The multicolored light from the 12 pearls interwove in the air to form a huge multicolored space that began to slowly close. After Yuan Fei Laozu disappeared without a trace, Shui Jiro screamed and questioned him. However, most of it was not because of anger, but because of fear. Dongyi Laozu and the others rushed towards Lu Ping. Just as Shui Jiro was about to follow them, she suddenly heard Yuan Fei Laozu's shout. For some reason, Shui Jiro felt a chill in her heart. She immediately gained the upper hand against the terror of Lu Ping. Without thinking, she turned around and rushed out of the area covered by the 12 gentian pearls. At this moment, the multicolored space of the gentian Great Formation was slowly forming. The fifth one to dash out was Feng Longlei. As a peak cultivator who was born on the Wind and Thunder Island, it was obvious that he had an extremely high attainment in the art of escaping. Just as Patriarch Elemental Fei reminded them, other than Dong Yi, Wu Jie, and Rong Shan, Yuan An, Elder Ma Si, and Feng Zhonglei all turned around and fled at the same time. However, it was not easy for Lu Ping to set up such a killing trap. How could he let them escape so easily? In the end, only Feng Zhonglei escaped from the multicolored space one step ahead by relying on his Wind and Thunder secret technique. Then, with a loud bang, the multicolored space instantly formed. The area within a few hundred feet was completely covered. Immediately after, two loud noises came from the space. Yuan Ong and Ma the Great, who followed behind Feng Zhonglei, saw that they could not break out of the encirclement, so they used their divine abilities to bombard the space of the formation. However, it was obviously of no use. Only Lu Ping's mocking voice filled with killing intent and exhaustion came from the void. Gentian Great Formation, suppress mountains, overturn the earth, overturn the sky. When the 5 great cultivators who escaped from the formation heard Lu Ping's voice, they felt a lingering fear in their hearts. Yuan Fei Laozu was experienced and astute. He saw that Yun Tian, Shui Jiro, and even Qing Yuanqi and Feng Zhonglei beside him all had the intention to retreat. Yuan Fei Laozu secretly cursed these people in his heart. If they were a little more united, perhaps Lu Tianping would have been beaten to death by them. However, he couldn't retreat at this time. Not to mention that there were still 10 great cultivators at this time, and if they joined forces, they might not be able to do anything to Lu Tianping. Just the fact that Ancestor Dan Yuanong was also trapped in the Yuancheng Grand Formation, Ancestor Elemental Fei couldn't ignore it. He must make these people stay and help him. Everyone, let's quickly join forces and coordinate with the fellow cultivators who are trapped in the formation. Once we break this strange formation, Lu Tianping will definitely die. In fact, everyone knew that Lu Tianping was not their match at all when they joined forces. However, it was impossible to kill Lu Tianping without sacrificing a few lives. Now that someone was trapped in the formation, they were naturally candidates who were prepared to sacrifice their lives. Therefore, these people would definitely fight with their lives in the formation. Since there were already people who were trapped, they would not directly face Lu Tianping since they were outside the formation. Since they did not have to worry about dying, they naturally did not mind staying to help. If the person trapped in the formation fought with Lu Tianping and both of them were injured, they would benefit from it. Naturally, the old ancestor of Elemental Fei knew what these people were thinking. Even so, it was enough that these people could stay. Moreover, the old ancestor of Elemental Fei also had the same thoughts. The combined attack of the 5 great cultivators was naturally shocking. For a moment, the huge colorful space shook as if it was going to collapse at any time. However, the strange thing was that ever since the formation closed, Yuanong Laozu and Ma Si the Great were unable to escape and attack the protective cover of the formation once. After Lu Tianping's voice sounded, there was no more sound coming from the colorful formation. Only the 5 great cultivators outside the formation continued to attack the gentian formation. Seeing that Lu Tianping was hanging in the air in an extremely embarrassing manner, it was obvious that killing Yu Heng Laozu had also caused serious damage to Lu Ping. Dongyi Laozu, Rongshan Laozu, and Wujia Laozu took the lead and rushed towards Lu Ping. Dong Yilaozu's expression was even more ferocious as he roared. Lu Tianping, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. However, when Lu Ping suddenly raised his head and looked at Lu Ping Laozu, he saw a trace of mockery and disdain in Lu Ping's eyes. At this moment, Dong Yilaozu heard Element Fatty Laozu's reminder from behind. However, at this moment, the three of them had already rushed in front of Lu Ping and there was no turning back. They could only hope that the three of them could join forces and restrain Lu Ping. Then, when Element Fatty Laozu and the others broke this formation, it would still be the death of the person in front of them. However, looking at Lu Ping's gaze, Dong Yilaozu panicked for no reason. Then he heard Lu Ping shout coldly, Gentian formation, activate! Suppressing mountain! The entire colorful space was filled with a huge force. Dong Yilaozu felt as if a huge mountain had suddenly fallen on his back. Dong Yilaozu had no choice but to slow down and began to resist the huge force pressing down on him. However, even though these corsets were a considerable hindrance to the three great cultivators, and it was clear that they were struggling to move forward, they were still able to maintain their stance. They knew very well that all these methods came from Lu Ping. As long as they could restrain him, these strange formations could be easily solved. However, Lu Ping shouted again, Overturn the earth! Once again, several strange forces were born in the colorful space. Some of these forces were squeezing and some were pulling. The forces from all directions were strange and abnormal. Each of them directly landed on the cultivators' bodies, causing them unspeakable pain. At this moment, although these great cultivators' bodies were restrained, they still had the power to fight back. Then, following Lu Ping's shout, the space in the colorful formation immediately flipped. In the chaos, the five great cultivators who were trapped in the formation didn't even know where they were. Dong Yilaozu and the other two, who were about to rush to Lu Ping, instantly lost track of Lu Ping. Their bodies were restricted, their divine senses were restricted, and even their true essence was beginning to be restricted. The five great cultivators were finally terrified, and they unleashed all of their divine abilities, Dharma treasures, and Dharma artifacts to attack wildly in all directions. However, besides the noise around them, they couldn't hear the slightest sound from anywhere else. A golden light flashed. Dong Yilaozu, who was beginning to panic, suddenly felt a chill. When he looked down, he saw that his legs had already been separated from his body. Ah! Dong Yilaozu finally realized what had happened, and he immediately let out a scream. However, a sigh suddenly came from behind. Don't worry, that Songhai sect will soon be buried with you. Dong Yilaozu used all his strength to throw the sea-transferring token in his hand backward, but he suddenly heard a disdainful snort coming from his side. Then Dong Yilaozu felt a chill on his neck, and then he fell into endless darkness. The sea-transferring token, which was struggling in the void, was pinched by Lu Ping with one hand. He said coldly, Stop. The sea-transferring token immediately calmed down in Lu Ping's hand. Looking at this 1-foot-long black iron plate-shaped spiritual treasure, Lu Ping thought for a while and said, When I go back, I can borrow Elder Xianglu's Songhai bell and see what's so special about the three treasures of the sea. A golden praying mantis lying on Lu Ping's shoulder was very disdainful and said, It's just a first disaster spiritual treasure. What's so special about it? Lu Ping shook his head and said, That's not necessarily true. Maybe the people of the Songhai sect know something. It's a pity that Dongyi is dead. At this moment, Lu Ping's face suddenly turned pale. He suddenly coughed, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. I'm afraid the tactical matrix can't hold for long. This time, I underestimated the people of the Crystal Palace. I have to finish the battle quickly and leave as soon as possible. But before I leave, I must leave everyone an unforgettable lesson. The Gentian tactical matrix shook more and more violently. Even elemental fertilizer Laozu could see that the colorful rays of the tactical matrix were constantly breaking under the siege of the people. The tactical matrix is about to break. My friends, don't relax at the last moment. At this moment, the colorful tactical matrix, which had been calm all this time, suddenly produced a loud noise. Elemental fertilizer Laozu and the others immediately became alert. Previously, there had been no sound coming from the colorful tactical matrix. Although the few of them had tried their best to attack the protective shield of the tactical matrix, they were still very nervous. This tactical matrix was so strange that it was frightening. However, now that there was a loud noise coming from the tactical matrix, it at least proved that the people trapped in the tactical matrix were still alive. In this way, in order to deal with the people trapped in the tactical matrix, Lu Tianping would not attack the people outside. Even the great practitioners of the various sects who were attacking the tactical matrix did not realize that their fear of Lu Ping had reached such an extent. In the loud noise, the colorful tactical matrix finally began to collapse. The violent fluctuations in the space could even easily tear a mid-dharma adept to pieces. A flowing light covered in the color of blood flew out from the moment the Genshin tactical matrix collapsed, flying quickly towards the Yulan River in the east. Shueijiro screamed. "It's Lu Tianping, he's injured, he's trying to escape." Elemental fertilizer Laozu and the others had already roared and chased after him when Shueijiro had warned them. Feng Zhonglei's attack was the fastest. His whole body rode on the wind and lightning and instantly caught up with Lu Ping. A green bolt of lightning landed on the flowing light. There was a muffled sound. Feng Zhonglei's lightning magic did not stop Lu Ping. The blood color in the flowing light became even more intense, but its speed became even faster. "Where do you think you're going?" Elemental fertilizer Laozi yelled and attacked from the side. The glazed pagoda above his head lit up 8 levels in a row, and everything within a radius of more than 100 feet was plunged into chaos. All the practitioners within the chaos were affected, and every movement they made seemed to be covered in glue. However, the flowing light was not affected at all. It made a slight turn in midair, and a purple circle of light flashed and disappeared. Elemental fertilizer Laozu was startled and yelled, "Watch out!" As soon as he said this, he heard Shueijiro, who had just rushed over and was about to intercept the flowing light, suddenly let out a scream. The purple circle of light had already landed on Shueijiro's body. The circle of light contracted, and a purple jade bracelet firmly bound Shueijiro. The flowing light flashed by, and Shueijiro's head flew high into the air. Lu Ping's bone-chilling voice rang out from afar. "Who's chasing who?" Elemental fertilizer Laozu was startled. He knew that Lu Tianping was now an arrow at the end of its flight, but the ruthlessness of killing Shueijiro and the warning filled with killing intent made him lose the courage to chase after him. Not just him, even Feng Zhonglei, Qing Yuanqi, and Patriarch Cloud Sky, who had yet to make a move, could only stand there in the cold wind, watching from afar as that streak of light disappeared into the Yulan River. Cough, cough. Everyone shuddered. When they turned around, they saw Rong Mountain Laozu, who had lost his left arm and was covered in blood like a ferocious ghost, smiled brightly and said, "He still escaped?" Standing beside the great ancestor of the Rong Mountain clan was Ma Si, the elder of the Heavenly Horse clan, who was on the verge of death. Yuanong, Wu Jie, and Dong Yi, the other 3 powerful cultivators, had all fallen. Chapter 1449. After Xiang Palace was defeated in the sword duel in West River and Xiao Baiyu left with serious injuries, before the cultivation world could talk about the process of this sword duel with relish, a more shocking event swept the entire cultivation world with lightning speed. After the duel, 11 great cultivators from the 9 sects, led by the Crystal Palace and Wishing School, as well as the 4th elder of the Tenma people, joined forces to ambush the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. Even the Heshi sword duel paled in comparison. However, what was even more unbelievable and shocking was that the 12 great cultivators failed to ambush Lu Tianping. Instead, Lu Tianping killed 6 of them and severely injured 2 before breaking out of the encirclement. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Just when the entire world of cultivation was at a loss for words because of this incident, more accurate news came. Lu Ping's status in the world of cultivation soared so much that even Xiao Baiyu paled in comparison. For a whole month, the entire world of cultivation was filled with all kinds of news about the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. The process of Lu Ping's battle with the 12 great cultivators was also gradually discovered. First, there were not 12 but 14 cultivators besieging the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. Among them, 2 of the mid-Dharma Tenma people were easily killed by Lu Tianping at the beginning. Domineering. This kind of small fry deserved to be cannon fodder. A mid-Dharma adept, who could summon the wind and summon the rain in the North Sea in the past, could only be used as cannon fodder to boast about the might of the North Sea Sword Immortal. After that, the North Sea Sword Immortal brought a beauty with him. After discovering that they were ambushed, he resolutely left the best opportunity to break out of the encirclement to his confidant. He stayed behind to cover the rear, which was why he was surrounded by everyone. A true man. In the world of cultivation, where everyone was deceitful and hypocritical, this kind of true love was especially precious. After that, Lingxiu Laozu of the Lingwu sect was killed by the North Sea Sword Immortal with a pure Yang spirit treasure. Tragedy. The dream of the Lingwu sect as a large sect was once again far away. Wait, pure Yang spirit treasure? Where did Jinling get the pure Yang spiritual treasure? A sect that had just been promoted to a large-scale sect actually possessed a pure Yang spiritual treasure. Clearly, there was a need to reevaluate the sect's strength. A pure Yang spiritual treasure was a treasure that could change the state of the cultivation world. What? A scissor-shaped pure Yang spiritual treasure? Wait, isn't the North Sea Water Sword Immortal a sword cultivator? Why would he use a pair of scissors? However, the crux of the problem was not whether Lu Ping was a sword cultivator or not. In the lush jade swamp, Lu Ping, who had recovered most of his injuries, shook his head and said to Qi Lianying. Qi Lianying was puzzled and asked, "Why?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "It's just like how Xiao Baiyu didn't dare to return to the East Sea after killing LV Taiqing. Now I'm even worse. Xiao Baiyu only offended the Xiang Palace back then, but I disgraced the 9 sections. They all wanted to eat me alive. If I show up now, I don't know how many people will plot against me. Therefore, it's better for me to lie low for the time being." "Then aren't you afraid that these sects will cause trouble in the North Sea?" "The North Sea? That's my sect's territory. Besides, although what happened is similar to what happened to LV Taiqing, the nature is completely different. Xiao Baiyu and LV Taiqing had a grudge between sections. It was Xiao Baiyu who used a trick and didn't have much reason. On the other hand, I was innocently besieged and killed by the cultivators of various sections. Although the strong are respected in this world, when one's strength is equal, there's still a need to be reasonable. Now that the 5 sects have formed an alliance, even the Crystal Palace can't do anything about it. How many sects would dare to go to the North Sea to cause trouble? Do you really think that my precious sword is useless?" Qi Lianying chuckled and said, "To put it bluntly, I'm afraid of you." Lu Ping didn't deny it. Qi Lianying said again, "According to the news from the North Sea, our sect has already taken action against the Blue Sea sect. In fact, after the news that you were ambushed by Dongi Laozu and the others reached the North Sea, our sect has already begun to prepare for the extermination of the sect." Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's about time to take action. In fact, the real extermination of the sect has already begun when Dongi Laozu fell. Now it's just the last step." Qi Lianying was surprised and said, "Are you really not going back? Even if you go back secretly, if something happens to the sect, you'll be there to clean up the mess?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It's precisely because of this that I can't go back. After all, this sect doesn't belong to me alone. Some things still have to be solved by them. If we blindly put our hopes on 1 or 2 people, Jinling may walk the same path as Laozu 6,000 years ago." Qi Lianying thought about it and said, "In the end, I'm still a little worried." Lu Ping smiled and said, "The more worried I am, the more I can't go back. If our sect can't even deal with the Blue Sea sect, then dominating the North Sea is just a joke. Then who will the sect send to take charge of the extermination of the Blue Sea sect? Tianxiang Laozu has always been in charge of the sect, while that person is stationed in the North Sea, working with the 4 major sects to resist the Crystal Palace. That person Qi Lianying was talking about was naturally Jiang Tianlin. This time, when Lu Ping was seriously injured, the first person to send the news to the North Sea was Qi Lianying, who had his token. After that, she had been relaying the news from the North Sea to Lu Ping several times. However, Qi Lianying had returned to the North Sea several times. Lu Ping guessed that she should have met his teacher, Lu Tianling, and been carefully questioned by Lu Tianling. However, he didn't know if his teacher had discovered anything. Qi Lianying had never said anything, so naturally, Lu Ping didn't ask. However, Lu Ping had told Qi Lianying a lot about the grievances between Jiang Tianlin, Lu Tianling, and Mei Tianqin. He had even privately told Qi Lianying about what Mei Tianqin had told him about Jiang Tianxian. This made Qi Lianying admire her mother more, and at the same time, she felt a little more pity for Mei Tianqin. However, this made her dislike Jiang Tianlin a little more, which made Lu Ping a little dumbfounded. Now that the Blue Sea sect has become a trapped beast, I don't think the great cultivators of the sect will make a move. However, the Blue Sea sect is a sect that has been passed down for 10,000 years, so it's not necessarily that they don't have some trump cards. In this case, there might still be great cultivators of the sect, but they might not show up. Qi Lianying glared at him and said, "You only know how to beat around the bush, then who do you think it will be?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "That depends on whether there will be any disturbances in the East Sea recently." The Blue Sea sect of the North Sea had now all its territory under Jinling's control, and those who dared to resist were all killed. Now, the Blue Sea sect could only hide in the sect's territory and rely on the sect-protecting formation to resist Jinling's repeated attacks. However, after more than 10 Dharma adepts gathered by Jinling had continuously worn down the Blue Sea sect's sect-protecting formation for more than 10 consecutive days, the last barrier that the Blue Sea sect relied on was already in danger. However, at this time, the Crystal Palace suddenly sent 2 late Dharma adepts to lead several other Dharma adepts towards the old territory of the Northern Alliance. It was said that they were going to consolidate the various powers in the former Northern Alliance's territory, but in reality, they were aggressively heading towards the fallen secret territory. It was obvious that they were coming for Jinling. However, not long after the Crystal Palace adepts entered the former Northern Alliance's territory, 2 mid-Dharma adepts from the Crystal Palace were assassinated one after another. As Dharma adepts, they were constantly activating their protective powers and constantly using their divine will to scan their surroundings. However, the 2 men who had died had not even realized that danger was approaching. In fact, their protective powers had been easily broken through, and they had been killed in one blow. This meant that the killer not only had sharp attacks, but he also had an extremely powerful secret technique that was so powerful that even great adepts would have a hard time discovering him. Chapter 1450. Even though the Crystal Palace had taken sufficient precautions, as soon as the group from the Crystal Palace moved forward again, another group of Crystal Palace adepts were killed. This time, 2 people were killed, but the ones who died were 2 early Dharma adepts from the Purple Talisman Pavilion who had accompanied the Crystal Palace. This time, the 2 great adepts from the Crystal Palace, Yuanfei Laozu and Yuanqi Laozu, finally caught up with the killer. However, all they saw was a young man in his 20s, dressed in black, disappearing in a flash. Just as the 2 great adepts were about to give chase, he disappeared from their divine will. 3 days later, Yuanqi Laozu was seriously injured by the assassin, which shocked the entire East Sea training world. This was because this time, the other Yuanfei Laozu had followed the assassin, only to find out that the assassin was only a mid-Dharma adept. The Patriarch of Elemental Fat and the black-robed cultivator had exchanged blows for a short while. However, the black-robed cultivator clearly did not want to tangle with the Patriarch of Elemental Fat for too long. At most, the black-robed cultivator retreated after a single clash. Although the Patriarch of Elemental Fat managed to injure the black-robed cultivator still managed to escape from his pursuit. This time, the group from the Crystal Palace consisted of 2 great adepts, 3 mid-Dharma adepts, and 4 early Dharma adepts. Of the 3 mid-Dharma adepts, 2 were from the Purple Talisman Pavilion and 1 was from the Wind and Thunder Island. The 4 early Dharma adepts did not have a disciple from the Crystal Palace. This group of people aggressively attacked the old territory of the Northern Alliance. However, before they could reorganize the old territory of the Northern Alliance, they paid the price of losing 4 people and a great adept. In the end, they did not even reach the secret territory of the fallen secret realm before they retreated back to the Crystal Palace. In this battle, the Crystal Palace suffered another heavy blow, and the identity of the cultivator in black was soon confirmed. He was the 3rd-generation disciple of the North Sea Jinling sect, Devil Sword Yin Tianchu, who used to be 1 immortal and 1 demon, with the North Sea Water Sword Fairy. Yin Tianchu had actually made quite a name for himself among the rising stars of the cultivation world after the battle at the 9 Profound Tower. After all, he was able to fight his way into the top 50 of the 9 Profound Tower's battle merit ranking. At that time, all the cultivators who could make it onto the list were outstanding talents of their respective sections. Now they were the pillars of their respective sections. What's more, the monster who ranked first on the list belonged to the same sect as him. Naturally, he would receive more attention. In this way, it would not be too difficult to prove the identity of the person who attacked the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. This battle could also be considered as a battle where Yin Tianchu proved his strength to the entire cultivation world. Because he was once known as the North Sea Water Sword Fairy, Devil's Sword Yin Tianchu also became famous in the cultivation world. After that, the 2nd direct disciple of the Crystal Palace, Li Shiqian, announced that he would go to the old territory of the Northern Alliance to seek guidance from the Devil's Sword of Jinling. After the news spread back to the Central Plains, Lu Ping smiled and said, "With Brother Tianchu threatening the fallen secret realm and the old territory of the Northern Alliance, and with the help of the Carefree Pavilion and Skyrend, it seems that the person who presided over the Battle of the Blue Sea sect was Uncle Jiang Tianlin." Qi Lianying was shocked. "Aren't you worried? After all, Yin Tianchu is only a mid-Dharma adept. That Li Shiqian is the 2nd direct disciple of the Crystal Palace, a true late Dharma adept. Will Yin Tianchu be a match for him?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "If Brother Tianchu doesn't want to show his face, it will be difficult for me to find him. Although Li Shiqian is strong, he may not be ridiculously strong. Between the 2 of them, one in the open and the other in the dark, Brother Tianchu originally had the advantage of being in the dark. Coupled with his calm and ruthless nature, he may not be at a disadvantage. At most, the 2 of them will be evenly matched, and Brother Tianchu will just be at a slight disadvantage." Just as Yin Tianchu was making a name for himself in the East Sea, Jinling sent out a treasure ship with 17 Dharma adepts, including 7 mid-Dharma adepts. They led 500 core forging adepts to attack the Blue Sea sect's training hall. In this battle, Jinling had gathered almost 60 to 70% of the entire sect's combat power. After breaking through the protective formation of the Blue Sea sect, they began the final battle with the stubborn remnants of the Blue Sea sect. At this time, the Blue Sea sect's Dharma adepts were down to 6 under Jinling's continuous attacks. Against Jinling's 17 Dharma adepts, Lao Zhu naturally had no chance of winning, and all 6 Dharma adepts were killed. The Blue Sea sect finally intended to follow the example of the Fei Ling sect, activating the sect's protective formation to perish together with Jinling. Unexpectedly, in the end, because of the series of preparations Jinling had made before the final battle, the sect's protective formation was finally suppressed by Jiang Tianlin's treasure ship. After this battle, the Blue Sea sect, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years in the North Sea cultivation world and was once famous, was destroyed by Jinling. However, in the end, Jinling also paid the price of 1 Dharma adept dead and 3 seriously injured. Of the 500 core forging adepts, only about 400 were left. The losses were heavy. However, all of this was not worth mentioning compared to the final harvest. The Blue Sea sect was destroyed. In the entire North Sea, including Xianling sect, no one dared to question Jinling's current position in the slightest. After the annihilation of the Blue Sea sect, the actual control of Jinling's sect in the North Sea cultivation world increased by nearly 40%. The original 36 medium-sized islands under its jurisdiction had now increased to 49. In addition to the 2 large islands where the Blue Sea sect's dojo was located, the actual number of medium-sized islands under Jinling sect's control had reached 51. And these increased number of islands and the expansion of his sphere of influence would undoubtedly provide more abundant cultivation resources for Jinling in the future, supporting more cultivators to cultivate. After the fall of the Blue Sea sect, although the last cultivators of the Blue Sea sect tried to destroy the last heritage left by the Blue Sea sect, in the end, most of it was rescued by Jinling and transported back to Tianling Mountain. These things could be said to be all-encompassing. After all, the Blue Sea sect was a sect with more than 10,000 years of heritage. If it were not for the 3,000 years of division during this period, the heritage of the sect would even be stronger than that of Jinling before it became a large sect. Spirit materials, spirit herbs, mineral veins, spirit gardens, treasures, elixirs, talismans, cultivation methods, supernatural powers, secret skills, grotto heavens, and so on. The harvest of Jinling from this battle was enough to increase their heritage for 100 years. In particular, the few large spirit veins that were drawn from the dojo of the Blue Sea sect caused a huge change in the spirit veins of Tianling Mountain. Dense pillars of spiritual light shot straight into the sky from the top of Tianling Mountain as if they were tangible. In the end, they collided with the sky curtain of the sect-protecting formation, causing layers of ripples to spread in all directions of Tianling Mountain. The density of the spiritual qi in the entire Tianling Mountain reached a whole new level. Ever since the destruction of the Fei Ling sect and the sinking of Fei Ling Island, no sect in the North Sea had a large spirit vein for the past 3,000 to 4,000 years. Now, Jinling finally had a large spirit vein again. No matter when, a sect extermination battle could be regarded as a major event in the cultivation world. Moreover, as a medium-sized sect, the Blue Sea sect was somewhat famous even in the North Sea. The extermination battle of the Blue Sea sect could be regarded as a battle that Jinling had planned for a long time. After this battle, Jinling's strength in the North Sea would rise to a new level. Lu Tianping had never participated in this battle, which allowed the entire cultivation world to clearly see the strength that Jinling had displayed in the sect extermination battle. The process of Jinling's sect extermination battle had not been smooth sailing. Whether it was the Crystal Palace, the Taishan sect, or the Wishing School, they had all tried to interfere. However, with the support of the Taishan sect, the Heavenly Moon sect, and Skyrand, their attempts were resolved one by one. Even the Purple Sun Palace had supported Lu Tianping. After all, in the sword duel at Mount Liangshan, Lu Tianping had taken on Xiao Baiyu's attack head-on and saved Xie Tianyang, who had the greatest talent and potential among the third-generation cultivators of the Purple Sun Palace. The Purple Sun Palace had to acknowledge and return this favor. After this battle, Jinling's strength and status in the entire cultivation world will no longer be questioned. In that case, Jinling will also enter a period of rapid growth. Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes flickered as she said. Aunt Qin went into seclusion after returning from the Eastern Sea to participate in the battle against the Tsunghai sect. Does this mean that our sect will soon have another great cultivator? Lu Ping was startled. He said, "That is indeed possible. Now that Uncle Master Tianqin has gained control of that item and obtained its recognition, she will definitely be able to comprehend something from it. With this foundation, it is indeed time to prepare to summon the second lightning tribulation." Qi Lianing blinked and asked, "What is it exactly?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "The item that opens the sky." In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping had stayed in the lush jade swamp for another year. On this day, he suddenly received a secret message through the secret technique of space. After reading it, Lu Ping, who had disappeared from the cultivation world for 2 years, finally left the lush jade swamp and headed south. "Junior has offended Senior greatly during the sword duel at Mount Liangshan. I hope Senior won't take offense. May I ask if Senior's injuries have healed?" In the Jushuan mountain outside the Jushuan tower, Lu Ping met Xiao Baiyu, Qi Fan, and Full Moon, the three pure yang cultivators. Xiao Baiyu waved his hand and said, "Back then, you said that you might help. If you hadn't secretly helped Skyrend escape, I'm afraid Skyrend would have lost an heir disciple. After that, don't mention it again. The old man's injuries can be considered healed, but now we have to see how your injuries are. TSK, to be able to attract so much hatred at once, even the old man has to admit his inferiority." Full Moon Laozi said, "Every time, we have overestimated you, but every time, you are able to display astonishing strength. Little friend, your current strength and status are still above ordinary pure yang cultivators." Lu Ping repeatedly said that he didn't dare. He smiled and said, "Senior must be joking. This junior has been recovering from my injuries for 2 whole years." Qi Fan Laozi smiled and said, "All right, since the two of you are fine, then the matter of the Jiushuan Tower should be settled as soon as possible." Lu Ping was stunned and said, "Why? This is not a small matter. This junior suggests that we should be cautious. At this moment, the matter is of great importance, so it is better to be safe." After Lu Ping said this, the other three became silent. Lu Ping smiled awkwardly and said, "Is there anything that junior has not considered yet? Seniors, please enlighten me. I don't dare to enlighten you. They are just envious of you, envious of your youth. Back then, they also envied this Xiao. But now, this Xiao might even leave this world before them." Chapter 1451. Hearing Xiao Baiyu's words, Lu Ping did not know whether he should be envious or surprised, or perhaps he was pleasantly surprised. In short, his feelings were extremely complicated. Xiao Baiyu said sullenly, "I have been trying my best to suppress my cultivation, but I don't think it will be more than 200 years at most. If there is an accident, I may even leave this world in just over 100 years. Lu Ping was shocked, then immediately said with joy, "Senior is going to advance to true spirit? This is a good thing." Xiao Baiyu shook his head and said, "In less than 200 years, what can I leave behind for Skyrend? Only by obtaining the inheritance of the 9 profound tower can I leave behind enough resources for Skyrend after I leave. Of course, if I can obtain the method to form a small 1,000 world from the 9 profound tower, that would naturally be the best." Lu Ping then looked at 7 Fans Laozi and Full Moon Laozi. Full Moon Laozi smiled and said, "Don't look at me like that. It is not so easy to become a true spirit. Among the 3 of us, I am the weakest. Fellow Xiao has already become a true spirit, and Brother 7 Fans also has a glimmer of hope. That is why the 2 of them are so passionate about the 9 profound tower. As for me, even if I obtain the secret inheritance of the 9 profound tower, I will no longer have the possibility of becoming a true spirit. What I am doing is only for the future of Heavenly Moon Sect to have more true spirit cultivators." For Xiao Baiyu, a small 1,000 world that could allow him to hide was even more important than the inheritance to become a true spirit. For 7 Fans Laozi, in order to grasp the last glimmer of hope to become a true spirit, the 9 profound towers' true spirit inheritance was more important. As for Full Moon Laozi, she had already lost all hope of becoming a true spirit. What she is doing is only for the future of Heavenly Moon Sect. Then what about the other pure Yang Laozi? Why are they doing this? Especially Yuan Pokong and Yang Shoucheng, the 2 demon clan cultivators. How did they win the trust of the pure Yang seniors and believe that they wouldn't reveal this matter to their respective tribes? Lu Ping looked at Xiao Baiyu, but the one who didn't want to answer was 7 Fans Laozi. Fellow Taoist Feng Lu is the same as the old man. He also has a glimmer of hope of becoming a true spirit. The 9 profound tower is undoubtedly the best opportunity to obtain this glimmer of hope. Taoist 3 Qin and Taoist Lin Yu's thoughts are probably mainly on the legacies of their respective sections. The 7 prominent sects' younger generation disciples are lacking, and the Luo Xian sect that Taoist Lin Yu established in the East Sea is also full of problems and is in urgent need of strengthening. Furthermore, we have saved Taoist Lin Yu's life before. As for Gu Yu and Shi Hua, they should be somewhat dissatisfied. Although the pure young masters of the various sects had come to attack the 9 mystical tower this time for the sake of their sect's inheritance, if he thought about it carefully, it was most likely for him. Lu Ping also coveted the 9 mystical tower's secret inheritance, the mini Kiliacosm, and the sect's treasure, the 7-feather fan. However, Lu Ping had only coveted the treasures in the beginning, and wanted to take them for himself. Moreover, these things were obviously not something that could be enjoyed by one person. In the end, they still had to be used by the sect. However, when Lu Ping heard Xiao Baiyu's reason, Lu Ping felt a little nervous instead. When it came to the speed of cultivation, how could Lu Ping lose to Xiao Baiyu? Xiao Baiyu would at most advance to the pure yang level in 200 years, but with Lu Ping's current speed of cultivation, how long would it take? Lu Ping had cultivated for less than 300 years, but he was still a late Dharma adept. Before he entered the pure yang stage, he had relied on his own luck and hard work to achieve his current cultivation level. But after he passed the second thunder calamity, Lu Ping found a small bottle of Jiao Jiao's blood essence in the space grotto heaven beneath the volcanic mountain lake on Scarlet Mist Island. With that, Lu Ping's cultivation level skyrocketed even after he entered the late Dharma adept stage. Every time Lu Ping trained, he could feel that this small bottle of the essence of the Flood Dragon was very compatible with his own bloodline. Every time he trained, the huge amount of essence in the blood of the Flood Dragon would obviously improve and transform Lu Ping's level of cultivation and body. In addition, Lu Ping had the support of the water vein and a huge amount of top-grade spirit stones. This allowed Lu Ping's level of cultivation to increase rapidly no matter where he was. Before this, not only did Lu Ping not worry about the rapid growth of his level of cultivation, but he was also very happy about it. However, after hearing what Xiao Baiyu said, Lu Ping finally realized that even if he tried his best to suppress his level of cultivation, he would only be able to delay it for another 100 years before he advanced to the pure yang level. And after he advanced to the pure yang level, he would probably need at most 200 years to welcome the final moment of the 9 spirit transformations. 300 years was only 100 years later than Xiao Baiyu. In 300 years, even if Jinling obtained the secret of the small Kiliacosm from the 9 Xian Tower, he might not be able to transform the cave into a small Kiliacosm in such a short period of time. In terms of the sect's resources, although Jinling had made a lot of money, it might not be able to compete with the 3 sections. To transform a cave into a small Kiliacosm within 300 years was also not possible. If Jinling's small Kiliacosm did not take shape in time, wouldn't that mean that Lu Ping would most likely end up like Laozu, a comet in Jinling, or a jinx? Once he left, Jinling would most likely fall into decline and might even be besieged by the various sections. As for the 9 Xian Tower's small Kiliacosm, Lu Ping did not even need to think to know that it would belong to Xiao Baiyu. Only he was in the most urgent situation right now. Furthermore, he was the one who initiated the battle at the 9 Xian Tower. Unless Lu Ping was prepared to risk breaking the alliance of the 5 sects to snatch it, there would absolutely be no objections to the ownership of the small Kiliacosm. Furthermore, Xiao Baiyu was the strongest among the 11, so no one would dare to offend him. In other words, if Xiao Baiyu could successfully obtain the small Kiliacosm after the battle at the 9 Xian Tower, then Lu Ping might even leave this world before he did. As his thoughts raced, even Lu Ping began to feel a little uneasy. However, the 3 pure yang experts in front of him clearly did not notice the change in Lu Ping. Instead, they communicated with each other through their eyes, as if they were considering something. And Lu Ping also knew that this time, the 3 of them had not asked him to come out just for the matter at hand, so he just waited for them to explain to him. In the end, 7 Fan Laozu was the first to speak. He said, "Lu Xiaoyu, when fellow Taoist Xiao introduced you to our Pure Yang Alliance, he must have talked to you about some things in the future." Lu Ping nodded. Xiao Baiyu had indeed told him that the alliance's initial opponents were the Holy Lands and sects, and Lu Ping was the first non-pure Yang member that they had introduced. In that case, how about becoming the leader of the alliance in the future? Ah? Lu Ping was a little stunned, but looking at the expressions of the three people, it did not seem like they were joking. This matter was obviously beyond Lu Ping's expectations. Lu Ping had no choice but to bite the bullet and ask, "Leader?" Seven Fan Laozi nodded and said, "Of course, I don't want you to do it now, but in the future. The old man means that if we are all gone in the future, or if we no longer have the energy, can Lu Xiaoyu lead the latecomers to continue to maintain this alliance so that our sects do not have to struggle at death's door under the attacks of the Holy Lands?" Full Moon Laozi also said, "Starting from Haoran faction 25,000 years ago, Blue Parasol faction and Chu faction 20,000 years ago, Shang Mountain faction 18,000 years ago, Luoyu faction 15,000 years ago, Baron Jade Sword faction 11,000 years ago, Xingxian faction 9,000 years ago, Slow Wind faction 7,000 years ago, Jade Bone faction 4,000 years ago, Ingtian faction and Fei Ling faction 4,000 years ago, and now the Northern Alliance. The 6 Holy Lands can be seen behind the fall of these large sections. 200 years ago, if fellow Shao had not come to us one by one to propose this alliance of pure sun, I'm afraid that Tianxian sect's territory would have been occupied by the Taishian sect 200 years ago. Even if the Crystal Palace did not surrender, they would have already dragged down Tianxian sect. The Eastern Sea would not have risen before the fall of the Northern Alliance. The blood feud between fellow Feng Lu of the Spirit Beast Tamer sect has spread all over the world. The 6 Holy Lands almost searched the entire cultivation world for every generation's Empyrean wayfarer of the Spirit Beast Tamer sect, and so on and so forth. There are many similar incidents. Although there has never been any news in the cultivation world, if not for the alliance of pure sun, all the large sects in the cultivation world would have suffered a lot in the hands of the 6 Holy Lands. Xiao Baiyu said, "The alliance of pure sun is just helping each other out. With Lu Xiaoyu's current potential, it's almost certain that he will advance to pure Sunday. Perhaps your sect doesn't think so now, but once he does, I'm afraid that the pressure from the 6 Holy Lands will come rolling in. In order to maintain the special status of the 6 Holy Lands in the cultivation world, they usually try to eliminate as many factors that might cause accidents as possible." 7 Fan Laozi also said, "Lu Xiaoyu's future achievements will not be lower than fellow Lao's. If he can take over the alliance of pure sun after fellow Xiao, he can at least keep the 6 Holy Lands in check, so that they won't dare to act recklessly against our respective sections." Chapter 1452. Yin Tianchu's rise to fame in the East Sea attracted the attention of the second heir of the Crystal Palace, Li Shiqian. The two continued to fight in the East Sea and the North Sea. Although Li Shiqian had an absolute advantage in terms of strength, Yin Tianchu's strange concealment method, fast escape speed, and unexpected attack methods always made him invincible in a fight with Li Shiqian. The two encountered each other 5 times in the northern part of the East Sea. Every time Yin Tianchu missed his attack, he would retreat 1,000 miles. However, although the fight between the two was very short, they were always able to put on an exciting fight between sneak attacks and pursuit. In the 5 fights, Li Shiqian was injured by Yin Tianchu twice, and Li Shiqian successfully avoided Yin Tianchu's sneak attacks 3 times. Yin Tianchu was also injured by Li Shiqian twice. One time, Li Shiqian took advantage of Yin Tianchu's eagerness to attack him, and almost killed him. Li Shiqian's performance was fierce enough that no one in the East Sea doubted his strength. However, the more this was so, the more it showed Yin Tianchu's strength. The fight between the two was enough to attract attention. Naturally, there were many people in the East Sea world who paid attention to it. In just half a year, Yin Tianchu, the demon sword of the North Sea, became more and more famous. At this time, Junling's all-out attack on the Blue Sea sect in the North Sea was coming to an end. The Crystal Palace, which had been beaten back by Junling, once again gathered the Purple Talisman Court and Wind and Thunder Island. They directly sent the pure Yang practitioner, Yuan Yi Laozu, with 2 grand practitioners and a total of 11 practitioners above the Dharma stage to the fallen secret land. After Jinling connected Jingzhi Island and Hearing Wave Island, within this area of control, Jinling's strength had firmly controlled the southwest of the fallen secret land, directly threatening the passage between the Crystal Palace and Phantom Island. Although the Crystal Palace and the Phantom Island were connected by a transmission formation, the passage on the sea route was still of great importance. Once there was an emergency, Jinling could even directly cut off the sea passage between the Crystal Palace and the Phantom Island. At the same time, he could set up a large formation to interfere with the transmission formation between the Crystal Palace and the Phantom Island, completely cutting off the supply of spiritual stones to the Crystal Palace from the Phantom 5 Islands. Therefore, the Crystal Palace's integration of the forces in the old land of the Northern Alliance was actually a preparation to expel Jinling from occupying the southern sea of the fallen land. Such a big move of the Crystal Palace naturally could not be hidden from the Carefree Pavilion and the Sky-Splitting Sword sect. Xiao Baiyu quickly responded and joined the Tianxian sect and the Tianhua sect to launch an attack on the Crystal Palace's sphere of influence, trying to rescue the besieged by besieging 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 the besieged. The Water Crystal Palace, on the other hand, relied on the Purple Talisman Pavilion and Wind Thunder Island to send out a treasured ship to the north and south respectively, confronting the forces of the Free and Unfettered Pavilion and the Heaven Fisher Sword sect respectively. Especially the treasured ship that went south to confront the Heaven Fisher Sword sect, there were even pure yang cultivators of the Water Crystal Palace personally overseeing it. However, just when the training world thought that Jinling might be at a disadvantage this time, the North Sea Water Sword deity, who had disappeared from the training world for more than 2 years, suddenly appeared in the East Sea. Along with the Water Sword deity was a pure yang practitioner of the North Sea, Lin Yu Laozu. In the face of the combined forces of Lu Ping and Lin Yu Laozu, Yuan Yi Laozu was defeated and eventually retreated with serious injuries. The practitioners of the 3 sects, including the Crystal Palace, also fled in panic like stray dogs. Once again, the whole training world was shocked. Not long after, the famous 5 sects alliance in the training world became a 6 sects alliance to fight against the Crystal Palace. The new sect was the medium-sized Luoxin sect, which had been destroyed by the Wuxing school in the Central Plains. Soon, everything related to the Luoxin sect spread in the training world. This sect could barely be considered a medium-sized sect now. The founders were the 2 third-generation disciples of the Luoxin sect of the Central Plains. They were also a pair of brothers called Qin Yu and Qin Gang. They had only just entered the mid-Dharma stage. Although the Luoxin sect of the East Sea had 2 mid-Dharma adepts, other than that, there were only a few people in the sect. Other than a few practitioners of the core forging stage who were originally from the lone practitioners, the rest were only second-generation disciples who had just entered the blood condensation stage. No matter how one looked at it, this sect was just a newly established sect. Although it had inherited the heritage of the Luoxin sect of the Central Plains, it could barely be considered a medium-sized sect. No matter what, it did not have the right to be on the same level as the 5 sects. However, this sect had the backing of a pure yang adept like Lin Yu Laozu. Based on this alone, the status of the Luoxin sect in the training world would definitely rise as the 5 sects tried to recruit a pure yang adept to their side to fight against the Crystal Palace. In reality, if it were not for the support of Lin Yu Laozu, the brothers Qin Yu and Qin Gang would not have been able to enter the mid-Dharma stage so quickly and establish a force in the East Sea so easily. Of course, this was also because of Jinling's support from the beginning. The Luoxin sect had just been established, and there were many things that needed to be done. Just the training of disciples alone required a large amount of low-level training resources. There were alchemists, craftsmen, talisman masters, and so on. There were so many things that even if the 2 brothers had 3 heads and 6 arms, they would not be able to handle everything in an orderly manner. This was all because of Jinling's support. The sudden appearance of Lu Tianping and Lin Yu Laozu in the fallen mystery land immediately shocked the entire training world of the East Sea. The 3 sects, including the Crystal Palace, were forced to stop encroaching on the old lands of the Northern Alliance. On the other hand, Jinling and Luoxin's sect took the opportunity to head south. The Luoxin sect took the opportunity to swallow up some of the smaller forces in the old lands of the Northern Alliance to strengthen their own foundation. After Jinling and Luoxin's sect headed south, they could help each other with the Xiaoyao Pavilion, which had been suppressed by the Crystal Palace. Then, they could work together with Skyrend in the southern seas. Coupled with the strong support of the Tianxian sect and the Tianhua sect, the Crystal Palace was once again at a disadvantage in this round of confrontation. "Uncle, how is the situation in the North Sea now?" When Lu Ping saw Jiang Tianlin again and saw his excited expression, he knew that Jinling must have gained a lot from the battle to exterminate the Tsunghai sect. The cultivators of Jinling were all happy to see Lu Ping. Jiang Tianlin said, "Regardless of how the Tsunghai sect is doing, it was really dangerous this time. It's the first time in hundreds of years that I've seen your master so angry. If something had really happened to you, the Tsunghai sect would not have been able to compare." Lu Ping handed a storage instrument to Jiang Tianlin and smiled. "Although it was dangerous, we gained a lot. These are things that the disciples don't need. Please give them to the master, uncle. This time, the strength of our sect has skyrocketed, so we should focus on recuperating for a while. On one hand, we can prevent the chaos caused by the destruction of the Tsunghai sect in the North Sea. On the other hand, we can digest the gains of the Tsunghai sect and strengthen the foundation of our sect." Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "What you said is similar to what Tianling said, but let's forget about these things. They were all obtained by you in a bloody battle. The sect cannot take advantage of you." Lu Ping smiled and explained, "Most of the things inside are things that I don't need, but for the other Dharma adepts of the sect, many of them are urgently needed. Other than that, there are indeed 4 spirit treasures, but 2 of them are my cloud sail, and the other is a sea transfer order." When the cultivators of Jinling heard that Lu Ping had taken out 4 spirit treasures, they were already shocked. But when they thought about the battle at the Yulon River, where Lu Ping had killed 6 late Dharma adepts in one go and seriously injured 2 great adepts, it seemed reasonable that he had obtained these things. However, after hearing what Lu Ping said, Jiang Tianlin's expression froze. He said, "You mean that you want to use the other 2 spirit treasures to exchange for Elder Xiang Lu's Bell of the Vast Sea?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "That's right. If Elder Xiang Lu is not willing to do this, we can add another spirit treasure and exchange it for 3. Elder Xiang Lu should be able to understand the sect's intentions. He won't refuse." Years ago, when Laozu of the Vast Sea obtained the 7-star cave inheritance, there has always been a legend in the North Sea training world that he forged the 3 treasures of the Vast Sea in order to open the 7-star cave inheritance. Regardless of whether this is true or not, the 7-star cave inheritance must be part of our sect's plan. Jiang Tianlin Laozu also nodded solemnly. He took the storage ritual implement and said, "This is no small matter. Uncle Tianxiang has been planning this for all these years, and he already has a lot of clues in his hands. This time, with the help of the 3 treasures of the Vast Sea, things will definitely be much easier. However, in order for this to succeed, we still need your help when you return to the North Sea." Lu Ping nodded and said, "This is an important matter. I understand." Just as the Crystal Palace's power was being forced to retreat, they did not know that Lu Ping, Lin Yu, Xiao Baiyu, and the other pure young adepts had already quietly left the East Sea and snuck into the East Sea to meet up near the 9 Mystery Tower. Chapter 1453. Yin Tianchu followed Lu Ping to Middle-earth. Although he did not know why Lu Ping brought him to Middle-earth, he could sense that Lu Ping was involved in something extremely important, something that even Lu Ping felt pressured about. Upstream of Jushuan Mountain, in the mountains beside the Qingming River, Lu Ping handed the House of Gold to Yin Tianchu. Yin Tianchu did not take it. Instead, he asked with a gloomy face, "What are you planning to do?" Yin Tianchu knew how important the House of Gold was to Lu Ping. It could be said that most of Lu Ping's wealth was in the House of Gold. Now, Lu Ping was handing the House of Gold to Yin Tianchu. This was something that would only happen when a cultivator was about to go through a lightning tribulation. This meant that the thing that Lu Ping was involved in this time was extremely dangerous. There was even a risk that he might die. Doing this was to leave a backup plan. Also, if he died, his enemies would not take all his wealth. Of course, for Lu Ping to entrust these people with this meant that Lu Ping had absolute trust in Yin Tianchu. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Indeed, we are going to do something crazy. For ourselves and for the sect. Once we succeed, our sect will at least have the same status as the Tianxian sect in the cultivation world." Yin Tianchu was naturally aware that if he couldn't accomplish it, only death awaited him. Holding the House of Gold, Yin Tianchu suddenly asked, "If we really want to bring this back, who should we give it to?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Give it to Master. We can't protect the Sky Fox," Yin Tianchu said coldly. "She is already in seclusion. When she comes out, she might become a Sky Fox. She can't protect it either." Lu Ping's expression did not change. He continued, "Even with the help of friends like you, she won't be able to protect it. Instead, she might be harmed." Lu Ping looked at Yin Tianchu's cold expression and sighed. "This is the truth, and it's for her own good. Plus, she doesn't have the ability to inherit everything I have." Lu Ping then took out an interspatial ring and said, "This ring is for her. The items inside should be enough for her to survive the first lightning tribulation and then face the second lightning tribulation. However, whether she can survive the second lightning tribulation will depend on her luck." Yin Tianchu scoffed and took the storage ring. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before saying to Yin Tianchu, "If something really happens to me, junior brother, you need to go into seclusion and practice. You must not walk around the world of practitioners until you have passed the second lightning tribulation." Seeing the doubt in Yin Tianchu's eyes, Lu Ping explained, "The path that junior brother is taking is now feared by others. After the battle in the East Sea, everyone has already seen your abilities. If I die, you will definitely become a thorn in the side of those with ulterior motives. Only when you advance to the late Dharma stage will you be feared and feared. Plus, if I die, the sect will need someone to rise up and take over my position. In the sect, not counting the third and fourth generation disciples, only junior brother can take on such a heavy responsibility." This time, Yin Tianchu nodded seriously and said, "Understood." Yin Tianchu chose a secluded place in the mountains to set up a temporary cave. In the cave, there was a lit lamp on a stone platform. However, there was no oil in the lamp. This was a soul lamp that Lu Ping had left for Yin Tianchu. Once the soul lamp was extinguished, Yin Tianchu would immediately return to the North Sea with the items that Lu Ping had left behind. In the light, Lu Ping patted the spiritual beast bag on his waist and said with a smile, "I didn't think that Debao would take the initiative to follow me to the 9 mystical tower. Aren't you afraid that you will be turned into rat meat soup?" Debao shouted from within the spiritual beast bag, "I'm scared to death. The 6 holy lands have stood strong since the beginning of time. Who knows if you will die this time? But when I think of the treasures in the 9 mystical tower, it will be worth it even if I, Debao, die." Lu Ping laughed heartily and said, "Don't worry, even if I fail this time, it won't be easy for the 9 mystical tower to kill me." 3 rainbow-colored lights flickered in Lu Ping's hands. These were the 3 rainbow-colored tail feathers of the Luan Taoist. Each of these tail feathers contained the heaven-splitting divine ability that the Luan Taoist had personally sealed. This was the reason why Lu Ping dared to face the 9 mystical tower, and the heaven-splitting divine weapon. At the foot of the 9 mystical mountain, the 10 pure young experts and Lu Tianping were all present. Xiao Baiyu smiled when he saw that everyone had gathered. Looks like everyone has settled their affairs. Now, it's time to talk about how to divide the spoils. Everyone ignored the inauspicious tone of Xiao Baiyu's words. Their expressions turned serious. Although they had come in an alliance, they were facing a colossus like the 9 mystical tower. Even though this colossus was currently at its weakest, the 11 cultivators who stood at the peak of the cultivation world did not have absolute confidence that they would be able to escape unscathed from the 9 mystical tower. However, the reason why they had taken such a huge risk was because they wanted to fight for the great benefits within the 9 mystical tower. Even blood brothers had to settle their debts clearly. If they did not make things clear in advance, they would become a laughing stock if they were killed for their treasures due to unfairness in the distribution. Xiao Baiyu was the one who had initiated this operation and was also the strongest amongst the 11. Naturally, he was in charge of this matter. None of us dare to say that we can escape unscathed. The 9 mystical towers' inheritance, as well as the secret techniques that have been passed down from generation to generation, must be shared no matter who obtains them. I believe that no one has any objections to this. Guyu Laozu and Shihua Laozu, the 2 pure yang cultivators, smiled and said, "This is what we are after. As long as we obtain it, we can even give in to the others appropriately." Guyu Laozu and Shihua Laozu were not bound by a sect and did not value the 9 mystical towers' cultivation resources as much as the others. However, they did not have to give in to the others. If they really needed something, they would naturally do it. Lin Yu Laozu originally belonged to this group as well. However, he was now the Luo Xian sect's supreme elder. Luo Xian sect had many things to do in the East Sea, and he naturally could not be as carefree as Gu Yu and Shihua Laozu. Yuan Pokong and Yan Shoucheng glanced at each other and said, "It's fine as long as we obtain that inherited secret technique. We don't care about those cultivation resources. The 2 of us are only doing this for the sake of returning Brother Zhao's favor." Qi Fan Laozu looked at the quiet Lu Ping and asked with a smile, "What do you think, Lu Xiaoyu?" If it was before, although everyone acknowledged that Lu Ping had the right to join the Pure Yang Alliance, they might not necessarily acknowledge his position. However, it was different now. Not only did Lu Ping bring 6 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans with him, he also had to bear the heavy responsibility of temporarily shaking the entire Qingming River. Of course, the most important thing was the shocking battle at the Yulan River. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "The cultivation resources are easy to deal with. When the time comes, we can either split them equally or according to our contributions. Even if we encounter some rare items, we can use other items to make up for it. The only thing to worry about are the spiritual treasures and rare treasures. These items are rare and often unique in the world. They can't be replicated. If we get into a dispute over these items, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to decide." Xiao Baiyu was the first to reply. "I'm only after the spiritual inheritance and the Kiliakosm. I, Skyren, believe in destroying all techniques with a single sword. I'm not too concerned about the spiritual treasures. As long as the Kiliakosm of the 9 mystical tower belongs to me, everything else can be discussed." No one objected to this point. As the organizer of the Pure Yang Alliance and the strongest person, the Kiliakosm had been Xiao Baiyu's goal from the very beginning. It was also one of the reasons why he established the Pure Yang Alliance. Furthermore, Xiao Baiyu was about to take the final step of becoming a spiritual treasure. Even if someone took the Kiliakosm from him now, how could they keep it in the future? 7 Fan Laozu muttered. "It's been stated from the beginning that the Kiliakosm belongs to fellow Taoist Xiao. However, it would be best if the 9 mystical tower has a secret technique to create a Kiliakosm. If there isn't, I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can open the Kiliakosm so that everyone can have the opportunity to explore the mysteries of the Kiliakosm." Xiao Baiyu was startled and immediately said, "Of course." At this time, Full Moon Laozu suggested, "How about this? I'll take turns picking up the spiritual treasures and unique treasures one by one. Then, the cycle will repeat. In this way, whether the spiritual treasures you get will depend on the order and luck. What do you think?" Sanchen Laozu also opened his mouth and said, "This is also a good idea. However, after determining the order of picking up, it's better to pick up the spiritual treasures twice in a round." Lu Ping understood what he meant. In other words, if the order of picking up was determined for the 11 cultivators, after picking up the spiritual treasures from the first to the last, then from the 11th to the first, it would be considered a round. This way, the gap between them could be narrowed even more. Sanchen Laozu's suggestion was approved by Gu Yu, Shi Hua, and Lin Yu Laozu. Yuan Pokong laughed and said, "In that case, how should we arrange the order?" 7 Fan Laozu's expression didn't change. He said, "No matter what, this conference was initiated by fellow Taoist Xiao, so the order of first place should be given to fellow Taoist Xiao." There wouldn't be too many objections to this. However, it was hard to say how the order should be arranged after that. At this time, Feng Lu Laozu suddenly opened his mouth and said, "The order after the battle will be based on everyone's ability." At this time, Xiao Baiyu also said, "This is fair. However, I have already obtained the Kiliakosm, so I give up on the first 2 rounds." Chapter 1454. Deep into the night, the full moon hung high in the sky. The Qinming River seemed to flow peacefully under the moonlight, but in reality, one could still hear the sound of the river crashing against the shore in the distance. As the wind blew gently, one could see a figure hovering above the wide surface of the river from afar. Lu Ping was at the point where the Qinming River suddenly turned from east to west, and just a few miles behind Lu Ping was where the 9 mystical tower was located. Suddenly, a clear and distant sound of a flute pierced through the air, filling the surging river surface. Lu Ping, who was hovering in midair, heard the sound of the flute, and his entire body sank into the river. 138 feet below the surface of the Qinming River, Lu Ping could clearly sense the main water vein of the Qinming River. As the water vein was close to where the 9 mystical tower was located, and a considerable portion of the water vein was used by the 9 mystical tower, the turbulence of the water vein here was exceptionally intense. Under such circumstances, if it had been Lu Ping back at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain, he would not have even had the right to enter the water vein. Now, although the water vein seemed to be turbulent, Lu Ping could enter and leave at will. Even so, when Lu Ping entered the water vein, he could still feel how small he was. To put it bluntly, this water vein was personally opened by Ping Daoren back then. Now, even though Lu Ping's strength was comparable to that of a pure yang expert, it would still be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot if he wanted to shake the entire water vein, at least in the eyes of others. Perhaps some people would believe it if it was destruction. After all, the fact that Lu Ping had a pure yang spiritual treasure in his possession had long been known to the world. That was a water-dissolving talisman personally made by Taoist Chan. If it was really cut with a pair of scissors, even if it could not cut off the entire water vein, it would still cause serious damage to it. But if that happened, the mountains and rivers would definitely collapse and the consequences would be unimaginable. Even Lu Ping himself might not be able to survive the backlash of the water vein. Within the water vein, Lu Ping could clearly sense that although the water vein of the Qinming River was turbulent, there was a unique rhythm to it. This was due to the unique turbulence caused by the 9 mystical towers' use of the water vein. The closer he got to the 9 mystical tower, the more obvious the turbulence became. Although the sound of Lin Yu Laozu's flute could be heard, it was clear that Laozu had not yet activated the formation to restrict the 9 mystical towers' spiritual vein through the earth vein. He had only informed Lu Ping to start preparing. Lu Ping flipped his hands and made several hand seals. The Linglong wine cauldron was already floating above Lu Ping's head and slowly rotating in the water vein. Although it would only take a moment to block the water vein of the Qinming River, the danger involved was no less than that of Feng Lu and Xiao Baiyu's attack on the 9 mystical towers formation. However, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. Among the 11 practitioners participating in the plan, only Lu Ping was proficient in water-based techniques and had the most experience and confidence in controlling the water vein. Moreover, in the process of blocking the Qinming River's water vein, Lu Ping could also legitimately collect the essence of the water vein. This was what Lu Ping truly valued. Previously, Lu Ping had relied on the essence contained in half of the Qingming River's water vein to allow his level of training to advance rapidly from the mid-Dharma stage to the late Dharma stage in just a few decades. His foundation was stable and his inner yuan was strong. He did not seem to be lacking in the slightest because of the rapid increase in his level of training. This was only a branch of the Qingming River. This time, he could legitimately collect the essence of the entire Qingming River's water vein. Although the risk was great to Lu Ping, this was no less than robbing half of the longevity cave. Compared to the risk, it was worth it no matter what. For this, Lu Ping had even given up the opportunity to attack the 9 mystical tower first to reap the most benefits. Suddenly, a muffled rumble could be heard from the Qingming River. From the bottom of the river, there was a sudden turbidity. The mud and sand were swept up by the water vein and flowed downstream. Very soon, the water vein was filled with turbid water. Lao Tzu had finally begun to activate the earth vein. However, if he wanted to use the earth vein to restrict the supply of the 9 mystical towers' spirit vein, the commotion would naturally be huge. At this time, it was because Lu Ping was in the water vein. If he were in the air above the Qingming River, he would realize that the entire Qingming River, with the 9 mystical tower as the center, was shaking violently. The water of the Qingming River had also begun to churn, and the raging river water was constantly rushing towards the banks. In the Linglong wine cauldron floating above Lu Ping's head, the weapon spirit, Linglong, leaned against the side of the cauldron and said, "Big brother, it should be starting. Linglong can already feel that the earth vein's movement has stabilized. It should be that those people have already reached the limit of their control over the earth vein. If we act too late, the 9 mystical towers' counterattack will follow." Lu Ping nodded his head and took a deep breath. With a shake of his body, 12 gentian beads suddenly burst out from Lu Ping's body, forming a 5-colored halo around him. Then, a white jade lotus flower bloomed beneath Lu Ping's feet. The refined petals were covered in dense runes that flickered, resonating with the 12 gentian beads. The gentian grand array was formed. Then, Lu Ping's divine sense spread out and the origin time grand array started operating. As the divine sense's fluctuation gradually synchronized with the rhythm of the water vein's fluctuation, the entire origin time grand array suddenly became illusory in the Qingming River's water vein. It was as if the array's defense was about to melt into the water vein. At this moment, Lu Ping stretched out his hand and pointed towards the top of his head. The gentian wine cauldron made a "one" sound and began to slowly revolve in the water vein. The essence of the Qingming River was quietly assimilated and condensed by the gentian grand array. Then, it continuously flowed into the Linglong wine cauldron, but it did not cause any disturbances in the entire water vein. In the void outside the 9 profound towers grand array, Sanchen Laozu and Yang Shouchang stood side by side. Both of their eyes clearly cultivated a special eye technique, as they shone brightly in the night without attracting any attention. "Should we make a move? Gu Yu has clearly used the earth vein's movement to activate the 9 profound towers' spirit vein. Moreover, the power of the Qingming River's water vein seems to have weakened." Yang Shoucheng clearly couldn't make up his mind. At this time, the Peacock King brother, who was always teasing and mischievous, also appeared much more serious. "Let's wait a little longer. The power of the water vein is extremely weak, but it seems to be gradual. It has not caused any disturbances in the entire Qingming River's water vein." Sanchen Laozu's expression was solemn as he looked at the ground and the river beneath his feet. It was as if he was able to observe some of the minute details. Yang Shouchang pondered for a moment and said, "You mean to say that this Lu Tianping still has the confidence to continue weakening the water vein?" Sanchen Laozu said in a low voice. "That's right. Although I don't know what method he is using, it is obviously a marvelous technique. No wonder he is known as the Water Sword Immortal. Looks like fellow Zhao's previous suggestion makes a lot of sense." Yang Shouchang, however, was a little impatient. "With such a big movement, I'm afraid the 9 profound tower has already sensed that something is wrong. If we wait for too long, I'm afraid they will counterattack, and it will be troublesome." Sanchen Laozu's eyes flickered. Let's wait a little longer, let's wait a little longer. At this moment, the Qingming River's water vein was weakened once again. An endless stream of water essence was plagiarized by Lu Ping using the gentian formation and injected into the Linglong wine cauldron. It even dyed the entire second tribulation spiritual treasure blue. As Lu Ping's stealing of the water essence intensified, even with the protection of the gentian formation, the Qingming River's water vein could not help but become turbulent. However, the turbulence was not intense at first. As Lu Ping secretly stole the water essence, he also used the Linglong wine cauldron floating above his head to suppress the turbulence caused by the loss of the water essence. However, this process did not last for too long. The turbulence of the Qingming River's water vein became more and more intense, to the point where Lu Ping could no longer suppress it with the Linglong wine cauldron. Not only did the violent turbulence break free from Lu Ping's restraints, it even spread far and wide, directly affecting the 9 profound towers formation that was absorbing the water essence. However, this was not the end. Even though Lu Ping could no longer suppress the turbulence of the water vein, since he could not steal it secretly, he might as well steal it openly. With the assistance of the gentian formation, Lu Ping directly activated the spirit gathering ability to help the Linglong wine cauldron snatch the Qingming River's water essence. The huge amount of water essence even dyed the entire gentian formation and the Linglong wine cauldron into a ball of deep blue light. Because the Linglong wine cauldron could not store enough water essence, the ball of deep blue light expanded even more. Lu Ping's actions finally caused the entire Qingming River's water vein to retaliate. The Qingming River's water vein was the first thing Ping Daoren created after he landed in this world, and it contained the heaven and earth energy of this world. Lu Ping's unbridled actions finally caused the entire river to retaliate. In the void outside the 9 mystical towers sect protecting Grand Formation, Patriarch 3 Chen and Yang Shouchang looked at the 9 mystical towers sect protecting Grand Formation flickering. Clearly, it was because the spirit vein and Qingming River that supported the sect protecting Grand Formation were being suppressed. Let's do it. The 9 profound tower has already reacted. They're trying to use the spirit vein and water vein to sort out the surrounding Qingming River's water vein and earth vein. They've obviously realized that someone is targeting them. Yang Shoucheng clearly could not hold back his anger at this moment. If we don't act now, I'm afraid that fellow Taoist Xiao and Feng Lu will personally come to question us. Just as Yang Shoucheng finished speaking, Sanchen Laozu's eyes suddenly lit up. Pointing to the distance, he exclaimed, "Look!" Yang Shoucheng did not know what was going on. Looking in the direction Sanchen Laozu was pointing, he immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The Qingming River's flood is rising. This is the heaven and earth energy. That brat actually blocked the entire Qingming River's water vein and activated the heaven and earth energy. He must be tired of living. Even true spirit Laozi can't withstand this kind of backlash. Sanchen Laozu's face was filled with admiration. Amazing, amazing. This time, the 9 profound towers formation will definitely be broken. Yang Shoucheng shouted. Then what about this brat? Sanchen Laozu waved his hand. 36 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans fell from the sky like 36 rainbow-colored stars. Without turning his head, Sanchen Laozu said, "He chose his own path. Let's leave it to the heavens." 36 rainbow-colored stars were arranged in an orderly fashion, directly piercing through the void and landing on the 9 profound towers sect-protecting formation, forming a mysterious formation. This was one of the most brilliant methods of formation masters, using a formation to break a formation. Yang Shoucheng looked at the Qingming River behind him. The flood from upstream had already broken through the embankments on both sides of the Qingming River. The surging flood poured out, turning the plains on the south bank of the Qingming River into a country of water. I hope that brat can escape. Chapter 1455. Back then, Lu Ping had promised the other 10 pure yang cultivators to block the Qingming River's water vein. In everyone's eyes, the so-called block was only to weaken the water veins supplied to the 9 mystical tower. As for the degree of weakening, that would depend on Lu Ping's own ability. If he weakened it too much, the attack on the 9 mystical tower would be even more intense. The 9 mystical tower would be able to prepare less, and the chances of success would be higher. However, no one had expected that Lu Ping would be able to block the entire Qingming River's water vein and trigger a backlash from the heaven and earth force. Yan Shoucheng's good luck was heard by 3 Qin ancestor, who was in the middle of activating the void-breaking formation. He smiled and said, "If this kid can escape the backlash of the mighty power of heaven and earth, he will definitely be in the top 5 when it comes to picking up the spoils. The 9 mystical towers sect protecting formation has already been weakened by 50%. Most of this is due to him blocking the water vein. Even fellow Gu Yu is far from being able to match up to him." Yan Shoucheng was unconvinced. That will depend on his performance in the 9 mystical towers dojo. San Chen Laozu's hands formed seals, and one seal after another landed on the 36 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans. Yan Shoucheng assisted from the side. Rays of 5-colored light followed San Chen Laozu's seals, and the 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans became brighter and brighter. The 9 mystical towers sect protecting formation became weaker and weaker. The two of them chatted as they set up the formation. Clearly, because Lu Ping blocked the entire Qingming River's water vein, the two of them had a much easier time setting up the formation. 3 Dawn Patriarch laughed. Indeed. In the end, it all depends on the battle in the 9 mystical tower. But fellow Taoist Yang, have you forgotten about the battle at the Yulon River? Fellow Taoist, do you think that with your pure Yang energy, you would be able to handle the combined attacks of 12 powerful cultivators better than him? Yan Shoucheng's expression changed, and he said with a cold snort, "This kid is truly a monster even more monstrous than old Xiao." San Chen Laozu suddenly said with a serious expression, "To be honest, if he really escapes this time, the old man thinks that it is only right for him to inherit fellow Taoist Zhao's position as the Pure Sun Alliance leader in the future." Yan Shoucheng didn't reply, because the two of them had reached the final critical moment of setting up the formation. A furious roar came from the 9 Profound Towers training ground. Which thief dares to come to the 9 Profound Tower and court death? Yan Shoucheng suddenly mocked. It's already like this, and the 9 Profound House is still thinking of using their connections to intimidate others. As soon as he finished speaking, a cracking sound suddenly came from the void. A huge gap appeared in the sect protection formation that was enveloped by the 36 restriction-breaking talismans. The moment the gap in the array was broken, a ball of flame suddenly burst out from within and instantly sealed the entire gap. However, the moment the flames burst out, 3 different tiger roars sounded out. Feng Lu Laozu took the lead, commanding the 3 ferocious tigers to charge into the flames. Feng Lu of the spirit-taming beast sect, how dare you! In the void, Feng Lu roared. Noisy! Immediately after, the sky was filled with explosions from the gap in the sect protection formation. Although Feng Lu had charged into the formation, he was blocked by someone at the gap, unable to advance an inch. Moreover, from the intense spiritual energy fluctuations in the air, it was clear that Feng Lu was currently surrounded by the 9 Profound Towers cultivators. Moreover, the moment Feng Lu charged into the formation, the gap in the sect protection formation that had been broken by the void-breaking formation began to slowly but steadily shrink. At this moment, the sound of a sword resounded through the sky. Before everyone could look in the direction of the sound, a sword light had already split the void and rushed into the gap in the sect protection formation. Xiao Baiyu. The people of the 9 Profound Tower were clearly panicking because of the owner of the sword light. Right at this moment, the 3 Dawn Ancestors' expression changed, and he said, "Not good, the 9 Profound Pavilion's counterattack is coming. Everyone, quickly charge into the 9 Profound Pavilion sect, or else something unexpected will happen." Yang Shoucheng was slightly hesitant. Although Feng Lu and Xiao Baiyu had already rushed into the sect protection formation, they were still surrounded by the 9 Profound Tower. The reason why the other pure yang cultivators did not rush in immediately was because the 9 profound tower had prepared beforehand had left very little space. At this moment, 2 pure yang cultivators had already charged in. If one more person went in, not only would he not be able to help, he might even hinder the other 2. Right at this moment, the earthquake that had already calmed down erupted once more. This time, it wasn't centered around the 9 mystical tower, but the 9 mystical tower. The true source of the quake was the 9 mystical mountain, which was several dozen li away from the 9 mystical tower. A giant mountain collapsed with a loud bang, and Yang Shouchang's expression changed. Not good, that's where fellow Gu Yu and fellow Lin Yu are setting up the formation. Sanchen Laozu and Yang Shouchang immediately looked at the Qingming River several miles upstream from the 9 profound towers' encampment. The counterattack should be aimed at Lu Tianping, who was blocking the water vein. However, when the 2 of them looked up, they were shocked to find that Lu Ping had already broken free from the heaven and earth force that was erupting from the Qingming River's water vein. He had already rushed out of the Qingming River and was flying towards the 2 of them. The Qingming River's flood had already been restrained in the river, and the flood had already subsided. Lu Ping's body was soaked with blood, and his face was pale and exhausted. He staggered a few steps forward and stood firmly in front of the 2 pure yang martial emperors. He looked up and glanced at the chaotic battle in the sect protection array formation's gap. He said in a hoarse voice, "We've gone too far this time. They're obviously trapped inside and can't get out. What's the situation?" The 2 of them looked at Lu Ping in a daze. Sanchen Laozu almost forgot to control the space-breaking formation to prevent the sect protection formation from recovering. Yang Shouchang pulled his right sleeve with his left hand and gave a thumbs up with his right hand. "Amazing, you even dared to block the entire Qingming River's water vein. I don't know if you're stupid or if you've already planned this beforehand. But no matter what, there aren't many people in my life who admire me, and you're the 3rd. Lu Ping didn't have the time to consider whether Yang Shouchang's words were filled with mockery or admiration. At this time, because of the backlash from the Qingming River's water vein, Lu Ping barely managed to block it for a moment with the life origin arrays see coming. After that, he barely managed to escape from the water vein with only a few % of his true essence left. Seeing that Yuan Pokong was already the 3rd to rush into the water vein, Lu Ping took out a few medicinal pellets from his interspatial mystic instrument, and swallowed them all in one go before sitting down to meditate. Yang Shouchang was experienced and knowledgeable. When he saw the spirit pellets in Lu Ping's hand, he mumbled, "Damn, this brat even got his hands on the spirit monster fruit. Such a rare treasure is perfect for restoring one's true essence." Sanchen Laozi looked at Yang Shouchang and said anxiously, "Fellow Yang, don't be distracted. The 9 profound towers sect protection formation is coming for us soon." Yang Shouchang was also anxious at this moment. He shouted, "Old Shao, old fart phone, Yuan monkey, can the 3 of you F*King make it? If you don't work harder, you'll be like turtles in a jar once the sect protection formation closes." Just as Yang Shouchang finished speaking, Yuan Pokong's voice came from the gap in the sect protection formation that had shrunk by half. He cursed, "Stupid bird, it's easy for you to say that. Right now, the entire 9 profound tower is surrounding the 3 of us. Why don't you F*King come in and try?" Although Yuan Pokong was cursing loudly, the 3 people inside had clearly realized that the situation had reached the most critical moment. Whether or not they could succeed after plotting for dozens of years would depend on who was the first to break the deadlock. Sword light flashed, and the entire space shook. Tiger roars resounded, and even the miserable howls of a ferocious tiger could be heard from within the formation. It was obvious that Feng Lu's natal ferocious beast had been severely injured during the battle. Yuan Pokong made a big fuss, and the heaven-breaking rod in his hand smashed the entire space upside down. The 9 profound towers sect protection formation suddenly glowed and the entire formation started to condense. It gradually formed a wave of light that shot towards the gap that Sanchen Laozu and Xiao Luo had broken through. Yan Shoucheng stared at the wave of light that was about to rush into the gap and cursed. If I really go in, I'll really become AF * King Turtle like you guys. When the spirit light wave approached the gap, it suddenly sped up. 3 Dawn Patriarch and Yan Shoucheng moved their hands like butterflies flying through flowers. Their true essence poured into the space-breaking array as if they didn't care about their lives. The wave of light collided with the space-breaking formation. There was no loud bang, only a sudden burst of white light. Even Yang Shoucheng and Sanchen Laozu had to close their eyes for a moment. Amidst the white spirit lights, only Lu Ping's eyes suddenly shot out a 3-foot-long green-red light. He ignored the white spirit lights and stared intently at the battle between the void-breaching array formation and the sect guardian array formation. At the same time, he also paid attention to the battle between the 3 pure yang cultivators and the 9 Xian pavilion. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly shouted, "Senior Shihua, now is the time." Patriarch Shihua was just about to step in, but the explosion of white spiritual light had obscured his vision and spiritual sense, and he didn't dare to hesitate in the slightest. His body suddenly exploded into a ball of yellow light that flew toward the gap in his memories. Lu Ping secretly sighed in his heart. Just when the spiritual light of the sect-protecting Great Array had reduced the gap made by the space-breaking Great Array to 3 feet wide, Xiao Baiyu and the other 2 who had entered the sect-protecting Great Array in advance finally managed to break through the encirclement of 9 mystical tower at the cost of Yuan Pokong's injury and Feng Lu's natal beast. At this moment, because of Lu Ping's timely reminder, Shihua Laozu, who had crashed into the sect protection formation, came in at the right time. The 4 pure yang cultivators working together suddenly became the last straw to break through the 9 profound towers sect protection formation. The light wave dissipated, and Sanchen Laozu and Yang Shoucheng's vision and divine sense recovered. When they looked at the place where the 2 formations clashed, the 9 profound towers sect protection formation was only 1 foot wide. Sanchen Laozu's heart palpitated. That was close! Yang Shoucheng also had a lingering fear. That was close, that was close! With a wah sound, 3 Qin ancestors spat out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer suppress the backlash from the previous clash of formations. Yan Shoucheng's face was also pale. It was obvious that he had expended a large amount of his quintessential essence. But he still smiled at Lu Ping and said, "How about it, kid? Do you have the guts to follow me and charge in?" Chapter 1456. Shihua Laozu and Full Moon Laozu charged in one after another, causing 9 profound towers blockade to fall into a state of near collapse. Ancestor Guyue and Ancestor Lin Yu had also rushed over. However, Ancestor Guyue was carried over by Ancestor Lin Yu using a divine ability. Previously, because he had used the Earth Vein to weaken the energy supply of the 9 profound towers Spirit Vein to the array formation, Ancestor Guyue had suffered a strong backlash from the 9 profound towers array formation masters. At this moment, he was already unconscious. Clearly, the 9 profound tower would not be able to participate in the final battle within the sect. Although Lin Yu Laozu had rushed over, he was not in a good state either. It seemed as though he had exhausted a great deal of his primary energy. He was in a worse state compared to Lu Ping, who had only just broken free from the water vein. After Shihua Laozu charged into 9 profound tower, the cultivators besieging 9 profound tower were on the verge of collapsing. However, despite the counterattacks from the sect's defensive array, both Yang Shoucheng and Sanchen Laozu were seriously wounded. In the end, they were still incapable of completely repairing the passageway opened up by the space break array. After Shihua Laozu charged into the array, the passageway was reduced to a size of 1 qi and stabilized. 7 Laozu waved his hand and his 7 spiritual fans flew forward to set up a magic array in midair. Next, he utilized his magic skill to forcibly tear open the passageway. However, even though the sect's defensive array was clearly running out of power, 7 Laozu was in a hurry to re-establish the connection with the 4 pure yang cultivators who had entered 9 profound tower. That was not something that could be done quickly. Seeing that, Full Moon Laozu brought out his life-bound spirit treasure, and the two of them worked together to tear open the passageway, reducing it to a size of 2 qi. However, that was still not enough. Once all of them charged into 9 Profound Tower, there was a high chance that the array masters from 9 Profound Tower would be able to seal off their escape route. Lu Ping consumed several precious True Essence recovery medicinal pellets one after another, and his True Essence had already recovered about 60% to 70%. If it weren't for his quick reflexes to resist the heaven and earth's force, it wouldn't have been easy for him to recover in such a short time. Let this junior lend the 2 seniors a hand. The sword of the true spirit slashed down. The defensive array that was already on the verge of collapsing under 7 Laozu and Full Moon Laozu could no longer withstand the slash of the sword of the true spirit. After a series of ripping sounds, the sect protective array was torn open by Lu Ping. On the side, 3 Qin old ancestors saw how Lu Ping easily tore through the sect protecting array formation. However, in addition to 8th Sister Zhu and the other pure young adepts who were previously injured, there was also an unfamiliar face. Yangshi Laozu, who had been unscathed during Mara's attack on the 9 Mystical Tower, had not appeared. In this case, there was only one possibility. Yangshi Laozu must be in the spirit space receiving the 9 Mystical Towers' immortal inheritance. In this case, the 9 Mystical Towers' sect-guarding treasure, the 7-feathered fan, must be in his hands. Lu Ping flipped over and entered the protective array. With a backhand slap on the protective array shield behind him, he used the force to attack the 9 Mystical Towers' hinterland. Along with Lu Ping, Yang Shouchang was not to be outdone. Lin Yu Laozu was protecting Gu Yu, while Laozu and San Chen Laozu were protecting everyone's escape route in the array. However, no one, including the 3 Qin ancestor, saw that when Lu Ping's palm landed on the 9 Mystical Pavilion's protective array formation, a void underworld essence had already entered the protective array formation. The 3 pure young adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower were still trying to block the attacks of Xiao Baiyu and the others. However, faced with the attacks of 7 pure young adepts and one who was not yet a pure young adept, the 9 Mystical Tower's side could only retreat. The 8 of them joined forces to chase after the 3 pure young adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower. Although they had the upper hand, they did not split up to take advantage of the opportunity to plunder. Although the group's plan was ultimately to plunder, when faced with a behemoth like the 9 Mystical Tower, they had to first completely destroy it so that it would not have the strength to retaliate. Only then could they divide the loot with peace of mind. All of them were top-notch great masters, and naturally, they would not ruin the grand plan for a small profit. Hence, although the 9 Mystical Tower had been defeated, the group did not waver in the slightest. They continued to chase after the 3 pure young adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower. Although the 3 pure young adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower could still use the Dharma soldier formation that the various mid and late Dharma adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower had barely managed to hold on for a while, amidst the continuous cries of pain, many of the Dharma adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower were falling one after another. The Dharma soldier formation was also in imminent danger. 8th Sister Zhu screamed. They are trying to destroy the 9 Mystical Tower! All disciples must remember this hatred. 9 Mystical Tower, listen up, disperse! 8th Sister Zhu could already see clearly that the 8 great masters in front of her were trying their best to kill as many high-level adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower as possible. If they continued to fight like this, the mid and late Dharma adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower would all be killed by them. If that happened, the 9 Mystical Tower would really be destroyed. At this moment, 8th Sister Zhu suddenly ordered the mid and late Dharma adepts of the 9 Mystical Tower to disperse. It seemed as if they had given up resisting. The 3 pure young adepts were facing a siege of 8 adepts of the same level, but they could still preserve the vitality of the 9 Mystical Tower. The great masters of the pure young level in front of them could only kill them. It was impossible for them to destroy the 9 Mystical Tower. At least there was still a chance for them to rise again in the future. Chapter 1457. Without the help of the many Dharma adepts of the Nine Xian Tower, 8th Sister Zhu and the other 2 pure yang adepts were no match for Xiao Baiyu and the rest. Under the repeated attacks of the crowd, they were soon riddled with injuries. It was only because everyone had their own reservations that they did not kill them. At this moment, a long howl rang out, followed by a thunderous roar. "Who dares to cause trouble in the Nine Xian Tower?" Everyone was shocked at first, but then, as if they had discovered something, they all heaved a sigh of relief. This thunderous roar was accompanied by a powerful aura that seemed to cover the sky and cover the earth. Although it seemed powerful, everyone could clearly sense the cultivation level of the person who had come. He was definitely a pure yang adept. Even if his level of cultivation was already at the top of the pure yang level, as long as he had not become a pure yang adept, no one would be afraid of him. The only thing that the Nine Xian Tower feared about the pure yang adept, Yanlan Laozu, was the heaven-opening divine weapon, the 7-feather fan, which he controlled. There was a ripple in the air, and a towering 9-story tower appeared and floated above the Nine Xian Tower. The tower was 100 feet tall, and one could reach for the stars. Even in the Nine Xian Tower, not many people knew that there was such a tower floating above the sect. "This must be the true foundation of the Nine Xian Tower." Xiao Baiyu looked at the plaque hanging above the entrance of the tower. On it were the words, "Nine Xian Tower," he said. "It seems that this Nine Xian Tower is also a lesser kiliacosm." Lu Ping was puzzled and asked, "Then what should we do? Should we enter or not?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "There is no need to enter. He will come out on his own." Seeing the puzzled look on Lu Ping's face, Chi Fan Laozu explained, "A spirit dimension cannot withstand the might of a heaven-splitting divine weapon. If Yanlan does not want to be trapped in a spirit dimension by us, he can only come out and fight to the death with us. It can be said that the moment we broke through the 9 Profound Towers sect protecting formation, the 9 Profound Tower had already lost this battle. In the cultivation world, not everyone can catch up to the time when the true spirit inheritance of the Holy Land is temporarily cut off. It is also not easy to gather 11 pure yang level cultivators." The portal of the mini kiliacosm floating above the sect opened wide. A green-faced old man, who looked to be in his 50s, walked out of the portal with a feather fan made of 7 different colored feathers. In a trance, he appeared in front of everyone and stood with 8th Sister Zhu and the other 2 pure yang disciples of the 9 Profound Tower. Facing Xiao Baiyu and the other 8 pure yang level cultivators, Yanlan Laozu was not afraid at all. He looked directly at Xiao Baiyu and said, "Fellow Xiao wants to destroy my 9 Profound Tower? I don't dare and I can't. I don't want to perish together with you," Xiao Baiyu said seriously. Yanlan Laozu opened his eyes and shouted, "If you can't destroy my 9 Profound Tower, aren't you afraid of my revenge in the future?" 7 Fans Laozu took a step forward and said coldly, "Fellow Yanlan, don't tell lies in front of famous people. Although we can't destroy the 9 Profound Tower, we can make it unable to recover from this setback. We came here with a request. If fellow Yanlan can satisfy our request, we will naturally retreat," Yanlan said sternly. 7 Fans, how dare you? This time, you have offended the dignity of the Holy Land. If you retreat now, the old man will naturally let bygones be bygones. But if you push your luck, do you really think that the old man has no means to deal with you?" Yuan Pokong opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. After breaking the 9 Profound Towers' protective formation, Yuan Pokong's internal organs had been shaken and he had suffered some injuries. Hearing Yanlan's words, he laughed and said, "Old man, if you really have the means to deal with us, why do you need to wait until now? It's just activating the 9 Profound Towers' forbidden formation. Now that we are prepared, we naturally won't perish together with you." Yanlan Laozu raised the heaven-splitting divine weapon in his hand and said coldly, "Humph, the old man at least has the 7-feather fan in his hand. Do you really think that you can defeat the old man? Moreover, even if the old man activates the forbidden formation, even if he can't go up to you, you can forget about getting anything you want from the 9 profound tower. Yang Shoucheng looked Yanlan Laozu up and down, his mouth making clicking sounds, but his mouth was not clean. He said, "Old thing, why don't you activate the forbidden formation? Why don't you do it? Are you afraid of death? If you're afraid of death, why are you boasting? I, old Yang, am sure that you won't dare to activate it." Yanlan snorted coldly, ignoring Yang Shoucheng's clamor. Instead, he said to Xiao Baiyu, "You and the others took advantage of the perilous situation to plot against my 9 profound tower, and even involved the demon race cultivators in it. You will definitely be despised by the human race cultivators. My 9 profound tower may be weak now, but we are still a Holy Land sect. Aren't you afraid of arousing the fear of the other Holy Lands and making a move against your respective sects?" Yuan Pokong scolded. "So what if I am a demon race cultivator? Yanlan, old man, to think that you are a pure Yang Holy Land, a grand master of a sect, yet your words are as narrow as a marketplace cultivator." Full Moon Laozu said calmly, "Since we dared to plot against the 9 profound tower, we are naturally prepared to disappear." As long as the other 5 Holy Lands do not know our whereabouts, which sect would dare to casually make a move against our sects? At most, we can just continue to attack them. Over the years, haven't we, the sects with pure Yang Holy Land, been like this? After Full Moon Laozu finished speaking, everyone fell into an unusual silence. However, Lu Ping and the others were slowly moving to their respective positions, slowly surrounding Yanlan Laozu and the others. At this time, among the 4 pure Yang Holy Land of the 9 profound tower, apart from Yanlan Laozu who was unscathed and 8th Sister Zhu's injuries were relatively light, the other 2 pure Yang Holy Land had been seriously injured by Xiao Baiyu and the others. They almost had no strength to fight again. However, at this time, the only thing that everyone was worried about was Yanlan Laozu's means of mutual destruction. Yanlan Laozu was the true soul candidate of the 9 profound tower of this generation. Previously, he had been in seclusion in the small 1,000 world of the 9 profound tower, trying to become a true soul. The small 1,000 world and the 7-feather fan were under his control, so the 9 profound tower's forbidden isolation formation was definitely under his control. After a long time, Yanlan Laozu finally opened his mouth and said with a gloomy face, "What do you want?" "It's very simple. The small 1,000 world, the secret of the 9 profound tower's true soul inheritance." Yanlan Laozu flew into a rage and said, "Wishful thinking. Even if the old man opens the forbidden isolation formation and the entire 9 profound tower's inheritance is ruined, it will not benefit you." However, just as Yanlan Laozu's voice fell, an earth-shattering sound like a thunderclap suddenly came from outside the 9 profound tower's sect protection formation behind Xiao Baiyu and the others. 7-Fan Laozu's expression immediately changed and he said sternly, "Not good, the 9 profound tower has reinforcements. Fellow Taoist 3 Chen and the others are in danger." Everyone, including Lu Ping, panicked. A thought suddenly rose in their hearts. Not good, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. We've fallen into a trap. At this time, Xiao Baiyu suddenly said sternly, "Don't panic. If you want to keep us here, unless a true soul cultivator personally makes a move, since fellow Taoist Yanlan won't give it to us, we can only take it by force. Now we have no way out. Otherwise, all our years of planning will be in vain, and the sects you belong to will suffer tragic revenge." You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.